justice, equity, and inclusion in Latin America. It's a pleasure to see such a diverse group of new AAPLAC participants and old participants who have this commitment to the values of AAPLAC. Me llena también de alegría de estar aquí en WOW y contar con el apoyo de la Oficina de Relaciones Internacionales y también con la Oficina de Asuntos Étnicos. Su colaboración es esencial para nosotros, para nuestro trabajo de superar las divisiones entre universidades, sistemas y personas en la educación internacional. It gives me great pleasure to be here at WOW for us to have a chance to see education where it happens. And we are collaborating with the International Education Office, also with the Office of Ethnic Relations here. And it's such a pleasure to be able to collaborate and see the work on the ground, to see where students are, to see realities in other places. Nuestro tema refleja la crucial intersección de justicia, equidad y diversidad e inclusión en el contexto de experiencias de estudio en el extranjero en Latinoamérica. A medida que nos adentramos en ese tema, somos conscientes de la misión imperdurable de AAPLAC de facilitar y fortalecer el estudio en el extranjero. El intercambio cultural y el aprendizaje global entre instituciones latinoamericanas, caribeñas, estadounidenses es fundamental. So our theme really reflects this intersection in study abroad in Latin America. And as we delve into this theme, I invite you all to think through these complex questions about the intersection of diversity, race, inclusion in Latin America and how we bridge the gaps of equity, of power, of international exchange. En una época de reconfiguración del estudio en el extranjero posterior a interrupciones de la pandemia de COVID, el campo de la educación internacional enfrenta profundas preguntas sobre su papel en la dirección de las desigualdades sistémicas y racismo estructural. Los programas que administramos, sin una reflexión crítica, pueden perpetuar involuntariamente la distribución desigual de recursos y poder. Our conference tiene como objeto enfrentar estos desafíos de frente, especialmente cuando participan estudiantes en instituciones estadounidenses. In this era of reboot in study abroad post-COVID disruptions, the field of international education faces some interesting questions in addressing systemic inequities and structural racism. Programs that we administer without critical reflection may unintentionally perpetuate unequal distribution of resources and power. And our conference really aims for us to take this time with each other to think about these challenges head on, and especially when we're talking about U.S. students and U.S. institutions doing work in Latin America, from this conference to the students that we bring and where we bring them. La experiencia inmersiva de intercambio cultural y lingüístico puede ser transformadora, desafiando identidades socioculturales, valores y objetos de aprendizaje. En Latinoamérica encontramos una oportunidad única para repensar nuestros enfoques hacia la educación internacional, colocando las voces latinoamericanas en primer plano de nuestra pedagogía y gestión de programas. So the immersive experience of cultural and linguistics exchange can be transformative, challenging sociocultural identities, values, and learning objectives. In Latin America, we do have a very unique opportunity to approach international education by placing Latin American voices at the forefront of our pedagogy and programming. And I invite you to think about how you might make that possible in the context of the work that you do. Esta conferencia nos incita a evaluar cómo nuestros programas reflejan, reproducen o responden a las realidades sociales. Crucialmente, debemos lidiar con el legado histórico de las relaciones entre Estados Unidos y Latinoamérica y trabajar hacia desmantelamiento de patrones imperialistas y coloniales dentro de nuestro campo. So this conference prompts us to evaluate how our programs reflect, reproduce, and respond to social realities. Crucially, we must grapple with the historical legacy between the US and Latin America and relationships and work towards dismantling imperialist and colonial patterns within our field. Entonces, esa conferencia invita a cada participante a explorar enfoques decoloniales para la educación en el extranjero, abordando sistemas opresivos y promoviendo la justicia, la diversidad, la equidad y la inclusión dentro de nuestro campo de trabajo. So again, we invite you to explore these decolonial approaches to education abroad. We invite you to address oppressive systems in your work and to be a leader in promoting equity, diversity, and inclusion in the field. En ese momento quiero expresar un sincero agradecimiento al personal de CET por su organización, a nuestros colegas universitarios aquí en UAU y mañana en Univalle, que su apoyo es tan importante para nosotros, y el intercambio que vamos a tener en estos días es un valor muy importante para nosotros. Entonces, gracias por abrir su espacio, gracias por todo el apoyo y la organización, porque están trabajando como doble, yo sé, en esta semana, y gracias por todo. So that is just a big thank you to all the partners on the ground who are working so hard. It's such a pleasure, one, to have CET, who, if you haven't noticed already, it's often challenging to pull these sorts of things off. And they have a team of amazing staff and students who are at our need at every moment, resolving all the issues so it rolls as smoothly as possible. And WOW as well has just embraced us with open arms. It gives you a chance to really see what a public university is like, and you'll hear from them soon a little bit more about the reality and the education system here at WOW. También yo quiero dar un agradecimiento especial a Cynthia McCall, quien es nuestro asistente de AAPLAC y estudiante posgraduado en Tulane, que ha estado con Hannah y conmigo desde ese año entero, haciendo el día a día de los correos de la organización. No sería posible sin su ayuda. So big special thanks to Cynthia McCall. You can just put your hand up. If you haven't met her yet, she is a graduate student at Tulane University in Latin American Studies and has been by my side and by Hannah's side this whole semester, helping with the day-to-day logistics of email exchanges and spreadsheets and all the things that often it's hard to keep up with when you're organizing a conference. So thank you. Y también un agradecimiento especial a mi vicepresidenta Hannah Palmer. Yes. Hannah, I really couldn't do it without you. Ella ha estado en cada momento ayudando con la organización, mandando correos muy tarde en la noche. I even emailed her on Mardi Gras and she responded, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. Pero she didn't respond, which I appreciate. Entonces, estoy súper agradecida por todo el trabajo que has hecho, ese equipo. Ok. Espérate, se me fue. Entonces, bienvenida aquí otra vez a AAPLAC 2024. Que nuestras discusiones sean esclarecedores, nuestras conexiones profundas y nuestro compromiso con la justicia, la equidad, la diversidad y la inclusión inquebrantable. Thank you. We could not have accomplished this without all of you here. Gracias y vamos a empezar. Algunas logísticas antes de WOW. So before we bring our presenters, I just want to write a few logistics. So one, if you haven't joined our WhatsApp group, see me, Cynthia, Hannah, someone so we can get you on. we're putting out information on that WhatsApp group, so you might be missing some things if you're not already registered. You got an email about it, but if you're not sure how to find it, we can help you get in. And for those of you on Saturday going to Alameda, we sent you the link to sign up for your lunch. So if you're doing the city tour and going to Alameda Market, you get to choose your lunch option. So look for the WhatsApp. Por favor, únete al grupo de WhatsApp. Ahí viene mucha información, especialmente los que van a Alameda el sábado. Hay un link para escoger su almuerzo. Y si no sabes cómo entrar en el grupo de WhatsApp, pueden comunicarse conmigo, con Hannah, con Cintoya. Las presentaciones, you will have in each panel. So AAPLAC is very collaborative. We like to engage with each other, both in this formal setting, but also in the informal setting. That's part of the culture of this conference. So that's why we do one session, everyone together. So you'll notice that the presentations are quite short, and that can be hard sometimes. So for those of you presenting, we have a moderator who will help keep you on track with the time. The reason we have them short is so that we have a lot of time for Q&A in that informal setting. That's really where a lot of the conversation in AAPLAC happens. So we'll have a larger Q&A in the group setting, and then these coffee hours as well, that are these ways to kind of exchange one-on-one. So you have this big platform, but also I invite you, when you have these moments, to if you heard something that you liked, if you want to learn more, to speak with those who presented. Vamos a tener moderador en cada sesión y que van a tomar notar el tiempo para los que van a presentar, que las presentaciones son cortas, pero la conversación y discusión va a ser larga. Entonces, que sean breves las presentaciones y largas las discusiones. Si no han mandado el PowerPoint a Hannah, por favor, manda a Hannah. Ella está esperando todas las presentaciones. Los PowerPoints, we're ready to receive them so we can make this flow as well as possible. Thank you so much. And we have noted the people that are going to need a little bit of help with translation. If you noted that for us in your, when you signed up for AAPLAC, and what we're going to do in the larger presentations, many of them will be bilingual, as I've done, but some of the smaller presentations, just for time, it may not be possible. So I'm going to try to have someone sit beside you to kind of be able to help you out as you need. So if you don't get tagged, or we don't know that someone's sitting beside you and you want someone that can help, either the Spanish to English or English to Spanish, find me and we'll find a way to sort of make that happen. Entonces, traducción en las presentaciones grandes, como las introducciones y eso, vamos a tratarlo de hacerlo bilingüe lo más posible. En las presentaciones cortas a veces es difícil hacer la traducción, y si las personas no usan AI, vamos a tratar de tener a alguien sentado a su lado para ayudar con la traducción. Pero esa información recibimos por el formulario en su registro. Si nos sentamos a su lado, o si quieres una ayuda, por favor, me indica a mí, a Hannah, Cintoya, y vamos a tener a alguien que puede ayudar. Okay, that's all from me. Entonces, ahora quería dar la bienvenida y la palabra a Wow. Muchas gracias.
Here, I'm going to be reading in Spanish, but she will help me with the translation. Y buenos días a todos y a todas. I go like paragraph by paragraph and you can summarize. Yeah, okay. Para la Universidad Autónoma de Occidente es un honor y un motivo de felicidad albergar la segunda jornada de esta importante conferencia dedicada a reflexionar y a compartir experiencias en torno a la justicia, la equidad, la diversidad y la inclusión en experiencias educativas internacionales. Celebramos, en primer lugar, que hayan elegido a Cali como sede del encuentro. La Nuestra es una ciudad diversa y multicultural que se ha construido, transformado, enriquecido a partir de los intercambios entre personas y grupos de diversas regiones y complejos culturales. es también una sociedad históricamente atravesada por profundas desigualdades sociales y económicas, en las que el racismo estructural ha dejado graves huellas y donde aún existen serios desafíos en cuanto a equidad e inclusión social. Y ahí la importancia de que nuestra Cali sea escenario de estas reflexiones desde la educación.
So a big warm welcome from WOW to you all. We are so grateful to have you here and to receive AAPLAC here on campus. It's also great to have you here in Cali. Cali is a really exciting city that fits very well into the theme of this conference. It's a vibrant, dynamic city. It's also a city that experiences great inequalities and injustices and social hierarchies. So there's much to explore in the experiential setting.
Aplaudimos, en segundo lugar, el hecho de que estas reflexiones tengan lugar aquí, en la Universidad Autónoma. Y lo hacemos no solo por tener la oportunidad de recibir invitados internacionales, sino que lo hacemos también y especialmente porque esta conferencia es un espacio de pensamiento, de colaboración y de reflexión crítica sobre cuestiones que están directamente relacionadas con nuestra razón de ser como universidad.
We're especially grateful to have you here at WOW, not only to be able to receive an international delegation, but because this theme and this commitment is very central to us as well here as a university at WOW.
Las preocupaciones por la justicia, la equidad, la diversidad y la inclusión ocupan un lugar central en nuestro proyecto educativo, en el tipo de formación que pretendemos brindar y en el tipo de profesionales que queremos formar. Para nosotros, pues, poder escucharlos e intercambiar con ustedes nos da una oportunidad única para dialogar y construir sobre aquellas apuestas que nos caracterizan y diferencian como universidad en Cali y en el suroccidente colombiano.
These same themes that you're exploring on this conference are what we try to explore through the university process here at WOW. So these exchanges with you all are going to be really enriching for us as an institution as well.
¿Y qué es aquello que nos distingue a la UAO de las demás universidades de la región? Nosotros somos y hemos sido desde siempre una universidad de la comunidad y para la comunidad. La inclusión social ha sido uno de nuestros principios rectores desde el inicio.
We are a university that is of and for the community, and that has been one of our goals from the beginning.
Surgimos en los años 60 como la Universidad de la Segunda Oportunidad, como la institución que abría sus puertas a todos quienes no podían acceder a las pocas universidades que para entonces había en la ciudad.
We have always been the University of Second Chance. We open our doors to those that may not have the opportunity to go to other universities within Cali.
Ese espíritu incluyente aún pervive. Una porción significativa de nuestra población estudiantil proviene de sectores socialmente desfavorecidos. Nuestra oferta formativa de proyección social hace presencia en los sectores más marginados de la ciudad. Nuestras iniciativas de investigación, creación e innovación se orientan por el propósito de trabajar y co-crear soluciones con los múltiples actores, grupos y comunidades sociales de la región.
A very large percentage of our student body here comes from socially disadvantaged groups within Cali and the surrounding region. The research that we do, the projects that we do are often related to the community and related to these marginalized sectors of our society and thinking about how to promote change.
Igual de importante nuestro compromiso con la diversidad. La UAO es el lugar de la diversidad. En nuestro campus convergen diferencias de todo tipo, sociales, étnicas, económicas, culturales, de género, de credos, de opiniones, de ideologías. Nuestro currículo está diseñado para reconocer y adaptarse a tal pluralidad de voces y formas de ver el mundo.
We pride ourselves on being the university of diversity, whether that be ethnic diversity, gender diversity, or socioeconomic diversity. Our curriculum is built with those tenets in mind.
Nuestro proyecto educativo busca formar en el reconocimiento de las diferencias y el respeto por el otro. Buscamos también preparar a los estudiantes para desenvolverse en contextos sociales y profesionales diversos, bajo la convicción de que el pluralismo es la base para la convivencia.
We work with these in our educational in our educational construction. We understand that at the base of change, the need to have this exchange of different voices and understanding, and that is the base of, that intercultural is the base of how we should move forward.
Hacemos una apuesta fuerte por abrazar el pluralismo en todas sus formas, el pluralismo ético y cultural, el pluralismo político, el pluralismo de género, el pluralismo ecológico y el pluralismo estético.
We embrace all of these different diversity, whether it's ethnic diversity, ecological diversity, socioeconomic diversity. This is the base of who we see ourselves as.
Nuestra apuesta por el pluralismo viene acompañada de un trabajo docente, investigativo y de servicio en clave intercultural. En la UAO entendemos la interculturalidad no solo como la valoración de las diferencias culturales, sino también y especialmente como un diálogo de saberes.
And we see this as part of the dialogue that happens in our classrooms and in our learning. These ways of understanding the world are central to us.
La formación de profesionales en clave intercultural es un interés transversal a nuestras propuestas educativas. Apuntamos a formar en capacidades y en disposiciones para el encuentro intercultural, para el establecimiento de diálogos mutuos en donde diferentes perspectivas puedan entenderse y respetarse, y para construir sentidos de comprensión mutua que tiendan puentes entre diferentes grupos e identidades dentro de un marco ético de respeto y reconocimiento.
We try to graduate professionals that have these values in mind, of understanding the importance of these values, of putting them into practice in their educational sphere, in the day-to-day of their curriculum, and in the dialogues with the world that they have and will have moving forward.
Y es justamente allí, en nuestro interés por el pluralismo y la interculturalidad, en donde está nuestro compromiso con una formación para la justicia social.
And this is the base of social justice that we bring to our educational system.
Enfatizamos en el pluralismo y en la valoración de las diferencias porque queremos promover una ética y una política del reconocimiento, una que valore, abrace y dignifique la diversidad de identidades y experiencias individuales y colectivas.
So this is both a political and an educational goal that we put forward.
Buscamos promover en nuestros estudiantes un compromiso, un sentimiento empático por las luchas por el reconocimiento de las distintas personas y grupos sociales.
And in working with groups, we work together so that this pluralism of voices can be heard and understood, and the dialogue is open and not only open, but is invited.
Porque las luchas por el reconocimiento son luchas contra la exclusión y la desigualdad, luchas por el acceso a derechos, luchas por la dignidad y luchas por la creación de condiciones de justicia y equidad. Creemos firmemente, pues, que el pluralismo brinda las herramientas necesarias para combatir las injusticias sociales, políticas y culturales, y que es fundamental para la construcción de un mundo mejor, más justo y más pacífico.
Because these dialogues are the basis of equity, of social justice, of inclusion that we bring forward, and we believe profoundly that this is the basis of our political discussions, our social negotiations that happen in order for us to have a better world to live in.
Esas apuestas no se quedan en lo local o en lo nacional. La nuestra es una formación que mira al mundo y que reconoce que los retos del vivir juntos en y a través de la diferencia involucran también los desafíos de habitar un mundo cada vez más conectado e interrelacionado.
This is both not only a local value and goal, but also a global value and goal. So when we talk about these things, our curriculum not only looks within our local context, but these intercultural connections that reach global peoples.
Nuestra intención acá no se agota en preparar a nuestros estudiantes para conectarse con el mundo o trabajar en contextos profesionales internacionales. Apunta también a sensibilizarlos y a cultivar en ellos aptitudes para encarar los grandes retos globales que nos atañen a todos como ciudadanos del mundo, desde las crisis climáticas, ambientales y alimentarias, hasta la perpetuación de formas de explotación, desigualdad, discriminación y violencia a escala mundial.
Our goal is that our students have a global vision, that they can take on these large themes of our time that bridge us and connect us across the globe, whether that be climate change, whether that be social inequalities, that we can work together and have the sensibility to understand how to approach these from a global context.
En correspondencia con esto y atendiendo al espíritu, a la temática de esta conferencia, quisiera reseñar muy brevemente dos experiencias recientes de aprendizaje internacional que hemos tenido en nuestra universidad.
So to show you how this works, I'm going to give you two examples of how within this university of international experiences that have brought on this theme and these values that we're talking about today.
Ambas experiencias fueron motivadas por un interés por incentivar el diálogo y el entendimiento intercultural y enfatizaron en problemáticas relacionadas con el racismo, las desigualdades sistémicas y las luchas por el reconocimiento, la dignidad y la justicia social.
Both examples were brought about with the need to talk about these injustices, to talk about racism, to talk about inequalities and dignity in this context.
La primera experiencia tuvo lugar en el segundo semestre de 2022 en el marco de un programa de colaboración académica entre universidades colombianas y Historically Black Colleges and Universities.
So the first one took place between our students and with the Black colleges and universities.
En este contexto, la universidad fue escenario del seminario internacional Raising Awareness, Building Bridges and Strengthening Identities Beyond Borders Through Internationalization of Higher Education Institutions.
So the first came through this initiative that he just named in English, which is that was a collaboration between Colombia and WOW.
Varios profesores autónomos de la universidad, junto con colegas de otras partes del país, tuvimos la oportunidad de capacitarnos en el diseño e implementación de cursos COIL desarrollados entre universidades colombianas y norteamericanas.
And through this, we got together with our professors along with Colombian professors at different universities in Colombia and in the United States, especially at historically Black institutions, to create COIL courses of connection.
Una de ellas se realizó con Xavier University en New Orleans y giró en torno al desarrollo de habilidades bilingües para la escritura académica.
And one of them took place with Xavier University in New Orleans and was a way in which to, through the Faculty of Humanities, to create a dialogue and exchange.
La segunda, muy similar a los temas que nos convocan hoy, se llevó a cabo con la misma institución y llevó por título Black Lives Matter All Around the World.
And the other was also with Xavier, that they did a online COIL collaboration with the theme of Black Lives Matter around the world.
Realizamos dos clases espejo sobre las formas en que comunidades negras en Colombia y Estados Unidos respondían y confrontaban problemáticas de exclusión social y violencia estatal y estructural.
And they were embracing these themes, the students together in these sort of window experiences and within the classroom to think about racism, structural racism and injustice, and how those played out in local contexts.
La segunda experiencia la tuvimos, es en curso y la hemos tenido desde 2023, mantenemos todavía.
And another one continues, it started in 23 and still continues now.
Como resultado de un convenio entre nuestra universidad y CET Academic Programs, precisely.
And it began between our university and CET, who we've been working with.
Ofrecemos un curso de 3 créditos a estudiantes norteamericanos de intercambios provenientes de diversos Historically Black Colleges and Universities.
And this is a course that it was specifically designed for U.S. students from historically Black colleges and universities who come to study for the semester at CET to discuss these themes.
El curso tiene por tema central la historia y la cultura de las poblaciones del Pacífico colombiano y ofrece una valiosa oportunidad para conocer las trayectorias de opresión, resistencia y transformación social y política de comunidades y movimientos afro del occidente colombiano.
And the curriculum goes into the Afro-Colombian experience, especially the Afro-Pacific experience, experiences of injustices and how they play out within the Colombian context.
Las actividades en el aula se complementaron con salidas de campo y experiencias inmersivas que potencian los aprendizajes, estimulan el diálogo intercultural y fortalecen la comprensión y la empatía con las principales problemáticas sociales, económicas, políticas y culturales que aquejan a las poblaciones afrocolombianas en la ciudad y en el campo.
And this course was not only here in the classroom in WOW, but it had embedded experiential learning where students work with the communities and take visits to exchange with Afro-Colombian communities in various contexts in the area.
Ambas experiencias nos han dejado muchos aprendizajes. Uno de los más importantes tiene que ver con la identificación y reflexión sobre los múltiples retos que traen consigo las experiencias educativas internacionales.
There's been so much learning through this experience, both locally and in international exchange.
Así que poder acompañar y asistir a las discusiones que sobre estos temas se tendrán aquí representa para nosotros una oportunidad única para pensar y construir sobre esos aprendizajes.
These types of exchanges are so fundamental. They gave us a chance to look at these themes from a global context and learn from each other.
Es también una oportunidad sin igual para avanzar en la planeación y desarrollo de experiencias globales de aprendizaje cada vez más enriquecedoras y afines con los propósitos de una educación para la inclusión, la equidad, la justicia y la transformación social.
And so these types of experience are what lead us to the goals that we have of equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Les deseo mucho éxito en esta jornada y espero que en el transcurso de este día de diálogos, reflexiones y aprendizajes logren conocer mejor nuestra universidad y se enamoren de nuestra propuesta formativa, tan cercana a los intereses y objetivos que hoy nos convocan.
So I wish you the best luck on this journey and this exchange, and I hope that these conversations and our exchanges here with WOW can lead us all on a path of equity and diversity. And thank you for being here, and I hope that all of your objectives, you're able to reach them.
So welcome today and always. Thank you very much.
Adrian, thank you very much. For all of you, welcome. On behalf of Universidad Autónoma de Occidente, we would like to tell you who Adrian is. Because it is my fault, I didn't do it on time. So please accept my apologies. Adrian Alzate García, I'm going to say it first in Spanish, sociólogo y doctor en historia. Él es profesor de la maestría en estudios culturales que tenemos aquí en WOW. Y su especialización es en temas de interculturalidad, teorías críticas y construcción de paz. Además ha sido el profesor estrella de los cursos que WOW ofrece para CET. Así que, y tiene muy buena acogida. Adrian Alzate Garcia, he's a sociologist and he holds a PhD in history. He's professor of the Masters in Intercultural Studies here at UAO. And his expertise is in interculturality, critical theories, and peace construction. He's been one of our outstanding professors for the CET courses, and he loves doing this. And for example, in this moment, he's teaching one of his courses. That's why he came and he ran out to comply with his responsibilities. I would also like to tell you that Professor Adrian is a member of the School of Communication, Humanities, and Arts, whose dean, Catalina Jimenez, is accompanying us. And all of the School of Communication is focused on this. Catalina, would you like to address a few words to the audience? Okay, thank you.
Hello everyone. I'm going to speak in Spanish. It's better than my English, but it's a pleasure to have you being here in Colombia and in UAO University. Como decía Cristina, soy la decana de la Facultad de Comunicación, Humanidades y Artes. El profesor Adrián es pues uno de nuestros docentes comprometidos con las temáticas de comunicación y cambio social. Ha sido un profesor, como lo mencionaba Cristina, de cursos con universidades de Estados Unidos hizo el profesor pues un recorrido muy detallado de lo que ha sido la universidad, su concepción de una universidad de y para la comunidad, el impacto social que tiene la Universidad Autónoma de Occidente en la región. Con 50 años, la universidad ha sido considerada como una de las iniciativas de impacto social más importantes del Valle del Cauca, por lo que ha implicado para el ingreso a la educación superior de las comunidades históricamente desfavorecidas. Entonces, pues realmente gracias por estar aquí. Yo quisiera que pensaran siempre en la Universidad Autónoma de Occidente como un aliado para la formación, para acogerlos en cursos, para que comprendan también y podamos mostrarle al mundo la oferta que tenemos tanto en investigación como en proyectos académicos como la maestría en estudios culturales, programas como la especialización en estudios de género y también muy fuertes en temas de comunicación. Nosotros somos una de las universidades más fuertes en temas de comunicación en el suroccidente del país, con un programa que ya cumple más de 35 años, un noticiero, el noticiero 90 minutos, es el más visto en Colombia, el noticiero regional más visto en Colombia y se produce y se hace en esta universidad. Entonces, tendremos oportunidad de conversar, quedo a su disposición, espero que me hayan comprendido o si no, pues la profesora me puede ayudar y un gusto pues tenerlos aquí. Gracias.
So I'd like to invite the first panelist up to the stage to begin. We'll begin in about 5 or 10 minutes. For those that there's coffee outside if you need a quick break, but we're going to begin right at 10:15. And there's also in the back, the restrooms are in the back. So if anyone needs to run to the restroom, here we go.
Tiene.
What is the most beautiful thing about Colombia? What is its true beauty? People are everything. And while sailing a river that runs through the jungle becoming the sea, you can hear more than 65 indigenous native languages. How is a country not going to be beautiful when in it you can taste a different fruit every day of the year? Thanks to the hard work of our farmers who bring food to the table of Colombians and tables of the whole world. We are proud of our 3 mountain ranges, but much more of our cyclists who conquer them in the longest mountain peak in the world. Here, the wind brings an aura of progress. This same wind talks to 1,900 species of birds and tells them which tree they need to reach in order to be seen. Our beautiful islands emerge from 2 oceans, and from our islands, a new union is born. Look at our mountains, and look at the acres that remain to be cultivated. And speaking of green, breathe easy, because we are a lung of the world. We live in midst of the beauty that changes every day, where the past, the present, and the future coexist in every region. A generous beauty for everyone wishing to see it. Who comes for business ends up staying for pleasure. Who comes for pleasure finds business opportunities. This is our invitation. Come for the first time or come back from wherever you are and tour the country to continue discovering Colombia, the country of beauty.
En Cali no se camina, en Cali se baila. Y hoy Bailamos al ritmo de la COP16 porque estamos orgullosos de representar a Colombia. Fuimos escogidos como la sede del encuentro de biodiversidad más importante del mundo, en donde más de 12.000 representantes de 180 países no solo hablarán de biodiversidad y acordarán acciones para protegerla, sino que la vivirán. Porque en este majestuoso rincón del planeta se reúne la riqueza de la biodiversidad, el conocimiento ancestral y la vida en todas sus manifestaciones. Hacemos parte de la región pacífica colombiana y del Chocó biogeográfico, que con sus montañas, selvas, extensos valles, mar, páramos y humedales, mágicos bosques tropicales y bosques de niebla, reservas naturales y áreas protegidas, nos ubican en una de las regiones más biodiversas del mundo, y donde los verdaderos guardianes han sido las comunidades indígenas y afro. Cuando llegues a Cali, la capital mundial de la salsa, descubrirás que tus parejas de baile tienen forma de río, de aves, de árboles, de animales sorprendentes, de flores, para que juntos hagamos una coreografía perfecta que inspire al mundo a unirnos en el cuidado, la preservación y el respeto hacia nuestra biodiversidad y a quienes juraron protegerla. Bienvenidos a la COP16 Cali 2024. Llegó el momento de ponernos en paz con la naturaleza.
Colombia, potencia de la vida.
This is Colombia, a very beautiful country. When I wondered what is behind so much beauty, I discovered something I hadn't seen before. It goes beyond likes and Photoshop. I discovered a different kind of beauty. Look at this bird and its colors in this slow motion shot. But like this bird, there are hundreds, thousands more. Because this is the best sky for them to fly in. And here, the ecosystems are perfect for them. I was surprised when I learned that the most beautiful river in the world is beautiful because it blooms. I know it's hard to believe, but it's true. It blooms to protect itself so it can preserve itself in this spectacular way. I understood why the Caribbean is called the Great Caribbean. Because in addition to beautiful beaches and 7-colored seas, it has a Sierra Nevada. Have you seen this? As well as a lost city, a river that becomes the sea, and a town that inspired our Nobel Prize writer. Tell me if this is not amazing. They come from the other side of the sea, only to discover a beauty never seen before. Here, your itinerary doesn't begin with a formal speech, but with the sound of the sea, with the smell of coffee, or with bird songs. Here, your itinerary doesn't come to an end, because the excitement never ends. The waterfall of the end of the world is where our oldest civilization, the Andean culture, begins. They allow us to enter into their house. We have a green beating heart that gives life to forests, plains, sunsets, and fauna. A heart that we protect and care for so that it remains full of life and beauty. Our beauty is so different and generous that it is formed by 2 Andes, mountains full of coffee, flowers, and unique villages to walk in. Andes Mountains with modern cities surrounded by life, water, sacred moors, beauty that is there waiting to be admired. The Pacific Ocean is so beautiful and warm that they come to visit us, and their song is so beautiful. Speaking of songs in the Pacific Ocean, listen to this. And look at this. This is the Pacific, so peaceful, rhythmic, flavorful, and not just when you dance salsa, but when you prepare it as well. A mix of culture you don't see anywhere else. This is another kind of beauty, an interior one that surprises us, that we had not seen before, a new beauty that invites us to protect it, to preserve it, to be sustainable with it. A beauty that endures, that we want everyone to live in, and that we want to show the world. Colombia, the country of beauty.
We're going to get started in just a second.
Good morning. Buenos dias. My name is Carolina Caballero. I am a senior professor of the practice at Tulane University. I want to welcome you all to the first session of the morning. It's a very exciting. We have great presentation for you today, a couple of great presentations. So first of all, do we have any, this will all be in English. Do we have anybody who will need translation? Raise your hand if you'll need translation. In Spanish? Great. All right. Muy bien. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to get started because we want to do plenty of time for Q&A, and I'm going to be looking at my phone to introduce. So we're going to start first with a wonderful group of professors and students from Albright College. And I'm going to start with the bios. First of all, we have presenting first up is Adam John. He's Associate Professor of French and Spanish at Albright. He has organized and participated in study abroad programs in Martinique, in Paris, in Haiti, and in Ecuador, which is amazing. He received his PhD from Penn State University in French and Francophone Studies. His research interests include post-colonial literatures, youth cultures, and intersectionality. With him, we have Sandy Bravo from the CEDEI Foundation. Sandy serves as the Director of International Programs at CEDE Foundation, maybe? Oh, fantastic, wonderful. Originally from Cuenca, Ecuador, Sandy holds a degree in tourism from the University del Azuay, bringing over 2 decades of invaluable experience to her role. She leverages her academic background, extensive experience, and genuine passion for international education to craft enriching programs that broaden horizons and foster enduring connections. She is dedicated to her work and actively contributes to the global exchange of knowledge and understanding. She is passionate about her work in the realm of international education, seeing as it means to a bridge of cultures, languages, and peoples, which was what we all are here for. Her extensive travels across Ecuador, as well as the United States, Mexico, Peru, Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Spain, Germany, and France have enriched her understanding and further fueled her commitment to fostering cross-cultural understanding and collaboration. And with Sandy and Adam, we have 2 wonderful undergraduate students who will be presenting. First, Alicia Aponte is a biology major at Albright College and member of the Global Scholars Program. She has attended Broadneck High School and played on the tennis team there and at Albright, continues to play. So we have an athlete. She has lived overseas twice in her life and is interested in exploring and understanding the other cultures and perspectives of people in different parts of the world. With this, she hopes to have a better understanding of the way people act and how their cultures influence who they are. With her, we have Jocelyn McLaughlin, who's a psychology major at Albright and a member of the Global Scholars Program. She attended Island Trees High School in New York, where she earned the capstone diploma, representing excellence in critical thinking, research, and writing. She looks forward to expanding her horizon through studying abroad and gaining a better understanding and appreciation of the world around her. So Adam, Sandy, Alicia, and Jocelyn, the title of their presentation is From Diversity to Full Participation, Global Scholars and Social Justice at Albright College.
Good morning. Buenos dias. We have practice, so we will be done in under 30 minutes. So for the slides, can we see them up here? Great. Okay, thank you so much. Bueno, buenos días a todos. Es un gran placer estar aquí con ustedes. It's great to be here. First, we would like to thank those members of this Albright community who contributed to this presentation. So obviously there are the 4 of us. And these are some people at Albright who also contributed to the presentation. And a shout out or a special recognition for Mariah Strobel, class of 2027, global scholar, psychology major and graduate of the Renaissance Academy Charter School in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. Without her help, this presentation would not be what it is today. Second, we would like to quickly tell you a little bit about Albright College and Reading, Pennsylvania. Albright College is located in the northeast corner of Reading, Pennsylvania. It is a private liberal arts college with roughly 1,200 students at the undergraduate and graduate levels. A little over 50% of the undergraduate student body identifies as non-white or white Hispanic. Reading, Reading, Pennsylvania is a city of roughly 95,000 people, of which approximately 65% identify as Hispanic. So when we think of academic programming in Latin America and the Caribbean at Albright, we must be more intentional about the connections we can make to this area of the world right in our own backyard. The title of our roundtable is From Diversity to Full Participation, Global Scholars and Social Justice at Albright College. We have two global scholars with us today who we've already been introduced to, Elise and Jocelyn. Can you guys stand up for a second? Okay. But you might be wondering what this term means. What does it mean to be a global scholar? Okay. This program is the brainchild of Dr. Brian Jennings, who's here with us today, and Assistant Dean Kim Justison. At its core, it incorporates some of the best practices for developing intercultural competencies and enhancing the first-year college experience. It creates a dynamic living and learning community for 15 to 18 first-year students who express interest in being part of a diverse cohort and who come from diverse backgrounds. The program actively selects students who are often underrepresented in study abroad, including first-generation students, non-white students, and students with high financial need. It is invested in generating a diverse faculty cohort from the numerous professors at Albright who teach first-year students. The program also values learning the target language of the study abroad destination and values establishing a variety of study abroad destinations. Once at Albright, the cohort of 15 to 18 students take 3 general education courses together in the fall semester, including their first-year seminar, which focuses on becoming a global scholar and creating meaning around the cultural transition to college. They take English 101 and Foreign Language 101. During the interim in January, the cohort travels abroad for at least 2 weeks, with Albright covering 90 to 95% of the cost to do so. For the first 2 years of the program, we traveled to Cuenca, Ecuador, with the incredible assistance and support of the CDI Foundation, the on-site host institution. Thank you so much, Sandy. In the spring semester, the students in the cohort return to Albright and take 3 more general education courses together: English 102, a sociology class, and Foreign Language 102. I'm sure you can imagine that there is much more to say about the Global Scholars Program and the attention paid to diversity based on this brief summary. In the interest of time, however, we are now going to turn our attention to the social justice module that we added to the program this year during its second iteration. I requested that this module be added to the Spanish 101 course because I wanted to provide a space that would intentionally foster reflection on representation, marginalization, positionality, and advocacy in Ecuadorian, Latin American, and local contexts. I wanted and still want students to question their assumptions and/or the limits of their own knowledge as they engage with the world, as they try to make sense of it in all of its complexities. It is important to raise awareness of marginalized communities, to give them access to these communities as much as possible, and to help them realize how incomplete their access is. So, for example, while visiting indigenous communities in and around Saraguro, which is located 2 hours south of Cuenca, we are certainly made aware of the challenges facing these communities, on the one hand. On the other hand, we recognize that the meaning we construct of these indigenous communities is inadequate because of the short time we spend with them and how we interact with them as part of a large group. At the same time, students are, as Tara Harvey states in a very recent blog post on truthnorthintercultural.com, and I quote, developing a more complex mindset around cultural difference and similarities, and are learning to handle more complexity, to not see things in such binary, polarized, either or ways, end quote. Therefore, as imperfect as this contact with the indigenous communities is, it's also part of the continuum of raising awareness of social justice issues, of recognizing that the handling of more complexity is paramount to the development of intercultural competencies, as is debunking the notion that study abroad alone will automatically lead to greater intercultural understanding. To quote Tara Harvey again, and to echo what many of you are probably thinking in this room right now, and I quote, "We know that contact and immersion don't consistently result in students developing the capacity to bridge cultural differences," end quote. With the social justice module, our focus, of course, is to enhance students' capacity to bridge these cultural differences. Simultaneously, we endeavor to underscore some similarities regarding the challenges that marginalized groups face on a local level and to support the diversity of the Global Scholars student cohort by raising awareness of issues that might impact them personally and which could have a validating effect on the ways in which they participate in the program. Therefore, it is imperative to me to include, for example, representations of Afro-Ecuadorians, the LGBTQ community in Ecuador, indigenous populations, immigrant and/or migrant communities, and male-female relationships. As the social justice module continues this semester, we are folding in public art, interactions with the environment, access to healthcare into our mix. We will spend some time discussing self-care and how marginalization can impede one's ability to take care of oneself and lead to further weathering, as examined by Arlene T. Hieronymus in her 2023 book titled Weathering: The Extraordinary Stress of Ordinary Life in an Unjust Society. Another aspect of intercultural competencies that can be enriched by the social justice module is advocacy or allyship. It is one thing to raise awareness of issues related to representation, marginalization, and positionality, and to better grasp their complexities. It is another to stimulate student thinking about how they can become respectful allies and eventual agents of change. They need to have a vocabulary that is both effective and appropriate in order to advocate for others. They also need to understand the advocacy that is already happening in marginalized or oppressed communities, especially by the very people experiencing this marginalization or oppression. We must be careful not to further erase or silence the marginalized or oppressed. That is why it is fundamental not to operate as the voice of the voiceless, but instead to center the voiceless and amplify their message through our advocacy. Interestingly, our study abroad experience in Ecuador was cut short this January by the state of exception declared by President Daniel Noboa on January 9th of this year, followed by the attack on a TV station in Guayaquil on January 10th and the subsequent nationwide shutdown. While the situation was tense, the decision to leave Ecuador was not necessarily made by those of us, including the students, on the ground, but rather by people very far away who did not have the knowledge or perspective of the situation that we did. In fact, as you will hear in a few minutes, the students refused to let this moment define their study abroad experience. Instead, they gained some understanding of who would be most impacted by the evolving situation and how. And they gained this understanding through conversations that they were having with Ecuadorians, with their host families, for example. From my point of view, I would like to think that the design of the Global Scholars Program, which seamlessly allowed for the increased focus on social justice, played a part in framing students' reaction to this unexpected turn of events, as did the students developing intercultural competencies. Thank you. Gracias. Okay. I now turn the panel over to my colleagues. First, Jocelyn McLaughlin and Alicia Ponte will examine social justice from the student perspective. They will analyze some of the data we collected from interviews conducted with other students in the cohort, all of whom did not participate in the social justice module in the fall semester because they were not enrolled in Spanish 101. They will also provide a personal reflection on the impact of the intentional focus on social justice on their own experience and intercultural development. Once they have finished, Sandy Bravo will discuss the implementation of the social justice module in the study abroad destination from her perspective as a key member of the on-site organization. She will also examine the value of focusing on social justice in study abroad programs in general, as well as what the CET Foundation could contribute to social justice modules in future programs. Alicia, Jocelyn?
Buenos días, me llamo Jocelyn
Yo soy estudiante de primer año en Albright College. Estudio psicobiología y quiero ser neuróloga. In the questions that we asked our participants, we tried to encapsulate our main themes of representation, marginalization, positionality, and advocacy. For those with the social justice module, which was 7 out of the 11 students that we had interviewed, we asked 8 questions, which were to define social justice, what issues stuck out the most during the abroad experience, how completing the module impacted the perception of social justice in Ecuador, how our time abroad led to an altered perception of social justice, what groups we felt were underrepresented, how previous education about social justice increased understanding of what occurred in Ecuador at the end of our trip, and how the inclination to engage in advocacy increased. Upon analyzing the results from these interviews, we found a couple common threads. The first one being that completing the social justice module did lead to a heightened awareness for observing the social injustices present in Ecuador. In other words, while we were in Ecuador, those with the module found themselves perceiving the injustices around them a lot more readily than they would without having prior knowledge. 2, learning about social justice in the module contextualized what happened at the end of our trip and how political instability affects the people of Ecuador. Without an in-depth understanding of Ecuador's political and government systems, the situation at the end of our stay would have been a lot more difficult for the students to understand and grapple with. 3, the students felt that Afro-Ecuadorians were the most underrepresented group in Ecuador, whether that be in our lectures, readings, and excursions, or even just in the city of Cuenca. And 4, the focus on social justice in this program creates a greater inclination to engage in advocacy on behalf of others by means of raising awareness and amplifying oppressed voices. It also fosters an understanding of our positionality and how we, as Americans, can fight for justice without overshadowing minority groups. It is also important to note that those with the module did not have trouble grappling with these questions. It seemed almost as if they prepared their answers in advance due to the quickness and clarity of their responses. This exemplifies the internal reflection and understanding of the social justice issues that they had perceived.
Buenos días, me llamo Alicia Ponte. Yo soy estudiante de primer año en Albright College, estudio biología y quiero ser cirujana. There were 4 students in our cohort who did not have the extra social justice module because they did not take the same Spanish class as the rest of us. When we interviewed these individuals, their questions were similar, but the lack of the module was considered. They had the same questions as the first group, plus one additional question which asked the interviewee to describe what exposure they had to social justice prior to Ecuador. They were then asked how whatever exposure they had made them more aware of social injustices while in Ecuador. 3 out of the 4 interviewees stated that the only social justice exposure they had was the discussions about it in our FYS class or none at all. FYS, or first year seminar, as Dr. John explained, was the class that focused on transitioning to college and exploring culture in Ecuador. The 4th interviewee had a little bit more exposure from her language arts class about social justice, but it was not Ecuador focused. The most shocking thing while interviewing them was the way they struggled to simply define social justice because they really had no prior knowledge of it. They never studied it like the first group did, so there was a long pause before giving their answers to the first question. In Ecuador, since they had little knowledge about social justice issues, they were not able to point them out and were not as aware of social justice issues that were happening right in front of them. The social justice issues that were discussed in classes during the interim and seeing those issues firsthand encouraged the second group as well as the first to advocate about certain social justice issues. The interviewees felt more capable of talking about the issues and simply raising awareness of what is going on in the country. This was also due to the cohort module that was present in the Global Scholars Program. The cohort allowed us to make friends a lot easier because we were constantly surrounded by the same group of people. We had to get along in order for our time in the cohort to be enjoyable. These bonds that were formed allowed for more open discussions while in Ecuador. For example, my 2 friends and I were able to talk about the cultural differences that we experienced or noticed while we were sharing a room in a hotel in Saraguro, a community in Ecuador comprised primarily of indigenous populations. This gave each of us insight into the other person's unique perspective on how they view the new culture. It helped us think about ourselves and who we are in another culture. It broadened our perspectives and allowed us to work together even stronger because we kept the other person's point of view in mind while combining them with our own. I had the extra social justice module, and while in Ecuador, I was constantly looking around at the different marginalized groups that were either not being represented or were misrepresented. The lack of outward affection of the LGBTQ plus community, the 2 or 3 Afro-Ecuadorians during the entire 2 weeks we were there, are 2 examples of issues that I instantly looked out for and noticed. Having the prior knowledge of social justice issues before going to Ecuador helped me identify how severe and real the social justice issues are in the country. Seeing the social justice issues firsthand emphasized and reminded me of the social justice issues that we see in the United States as well. It showed that we have our own problems in the US and should not look at another country's social issues condescendingly when they are also present in our own country, but instead work together to bring new ideas to the table to help the problem. Living with a host family also helped us to broaden our understanding of the new culture we were in. It allowed us to get insider information about how people view their own country and the problems that are present. Though there was a language barrier, as I do not speak Spanish fluently, my host mom was still able to explain to me the different issues of the country through body language and gestures and the knowledge I did have. Many may think that knowing Spanish or the language of the country is an integral part of learning from the people, but the people in Cuenca that host us were very helpful and patient with us. We worked together to get each other's points across, whether that be hand gestures and pointing or verbal language. This helped show me that in the end, we are more similar to others than we think and can always find a solution if we try.
Personally, I was one of the students with the social justice module, and I feel like my experiences in Ecuador are very aligned with what was represented in this program. However, another part of the program I would like to highlight is the classes that we are taking in the spring semester. These classes are geared towards a reflection of the things that we experienced in Ecuador in order to further enhance our ideas of social justice and further contextualize other social problems throughout the world. Not only are we introduced to social justice to prime our experience in Ecuador, we are able to reflect and learn from our experiences upon our arrival back home. I also thought that living with the host family was an integral part of the study abroad experience, especially as it pertains to social justice. One of our assignments was to interview our host families about a topic we were each assigned. My topic did happen to be social justice. I decided to focus on women in Ecuador. I found that my host mom gave me insight that I would not have been able to gain by simply reading about it. Additionally, my host mom helped me understand more about what happened at the end of our stay in Ecuador and how it relates to Ecuador's current justice system. Overall, I felt that my journey was incredibly enriching, and I hope to use the skills that I have learned in Ecuador and in this program to lift up others. We would now like to pass off the rest of this presentation to our CET partner, Sandy Bravo.
Thank you, Dr. Chan, Jocelyn, Alicia. I'm happy to be here sharing this panel with you. Buenos días a todos. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sandy Bravo. I'm director of the international program at CDI in Cuenca, Ecuador. I would like to start sharing information with you about the CDI Foundation. Okay. So, the Center for Inter-American Studies, CDI, is a nonprofit institution of higher learning dedicated to the study of languages and cultures of the Americas. It was founded 31 years ago, and CET sponsors a range of academic activities independently and in collaboration with universities in North and South America. CET offers the following programs: English program and international programs. English program offers English classes taught by certified teachers from different parts of the world. And we have approximately 1,200 students per 10-week cycle between children and adults in Cuenca. International programs offers intersession, summer, semester programs, as well as faculty-led individual programs throughout the year. During their stay in Cuenca, international students has the opportunity to stay with host families, which provide a rich experience, intercultural experience, and a deep immersion in also the culture and in the language. CET main center is located in the heart of the beautiful colonial city of Cuenca, a UNESCO cultural heritage site. Well, since its foundation, CET has been involved in different social justice projects. Through CET English program, the foundation has awarded scholarships to the students with limited financial resources and academic merit. Over 1,200 English students have been benefited from these scholarships in the last 10 years. Between 2014 and 2018, through a collaboration with the U.S. Department of State, CET hosts the English Access Micro Scholarship Program, an international project that helps economically disadvantaged teenagers to access opportunities and employment, education, and in life in general. Each cohort of students took 6 levels of English at CET and engaged in different educational and intercultural activities. Through the international program department as a host institution, CET seeks to establish and maintain relationships with Ecuadorian institutions that support vulnerable and minority groups. These institutions open their doors to our international students so they can closely experience the work they do, making this world a better place. A percentage of every study abroad program's funds is specifically allocated to providing resources for these institutions, like clothing, medicine, school supplies, and technological devices, like printers, computers, and tablets. Here you can find like some of our partners, like Casa Maria Amor, which provides assistance and also shelter to women victims of gender-based violence. Also, IPCA, Fundación Nuevo Mundo, Stephen Hopkins, there are schools for students with special needs focusing on cerebral paralysis. And Fundación also is a shelter for children and young people with 90% disability. As Dr. John mentioned, this is the second year that CET hosts Albright Global Scholar Program. And while considering Dr. John's request to include a social justice component this year, during the planning process, different ideas came to my mind. And although there were numerous activities that I would have liked to incorporate, but time was limited. A 4-week program can seem short when you have so many ideas in mind. I need to accommodate not only class hours, but also cultural activities, lectures, and intercultural activities. So that's why we focus on 3 specific activities. First, we organize a visit to a shelter for women victims of gender-based violence. Second, we schedule a talk with a representative of an activist group that halted mining exploitation in Quimsacocha, which is a crucial water source near Cuenca. And finally, visit the indigenous community of Saraguro that Dr. John mentioned before. And this activity we already conducted with the first global program last year. Now, through these activities, our intent was for students to have the opportunity to get to know different social, environmental, and vulnerable groups issues connected to social justice. Our main goal was to help the students reflect that it's possible to make a difference and achieve significant changes for the benefit to affect communities. Due to the state of emergency in January, we were not able to visit the women's shelters. However, a few days later, we were able to deliver the donations left by Albright students. And also, we were able to have the environmental talk online once the students were back in their home country. Our aim is that the students can better understand global issues like poverty, inequality, discrimination, and social justice across diverse cultural and socioeconomic contexts. This global awareness can inspire actions to advocate social justice initiatives both locally and globally. Thank you very much.
So we'll save all questions and Q&A at the end. We'll maybe have y'all come up here for that. I think that'll be great. So and thank y'all so much for that great presentation. Our next presenter is Chastity Simmons, a PhD candidate from Tulane University. Chastity is a native of the great city of Mobile, Alabama. She received a BA in Foreign Languages and Literatures with a concentration in Spanish from the University of South Alabama. For the gap year between her undergraduate and master's studies at LSU, she taught English as a second language in Cuenca, Spain, with the Aprende Lenguas program at the Universidad de Castilla-La Mancha. Chastity was awarded her MA in Hispanic Studies from Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge after completing her thesis with the title Redefining the Image of the Afro-Puerto Rican Woman in Recent Narratives by Mayra Santos Febres. Since receiving her MA, she has taught Spanish in K-12 and undergraduate programs. Her research interests include Afro-Latinidad and the African diasporic studies, social movements, post-colonial theory, and intersectionality. Today, Chastity will be talking to us about a very important topic, Black Girl Abroad, how Black girls and women experience microaggressions and racism while studying abroad. Chastity?
Buenos días, soy Chastity Simmons. Mucho gusto. So I'm here to talk to you guys about some of my own experiences and some of these experiences that I've noticed while working as an educator with students who are studying abroad. The presentation. This one is not mine. Do we have it? There it is. It's this one. This? Yeah. Thank you. Perfect. All right. So have it set up here. The title of this presentation is Black Girl Abroad, How Black Girls and Women Experience Microaggressions and Racism While Studying Abroad. And I'm gonna start with my own experience as a in-between student between my bachelor's program and my master's program. So after I graduated from the University of South Alabama, I was invited by the university to take part in an exchange program between the University of South Alabama and the Universidad de Castilla-La Mancha in Cuenca. So during this program, I was able to teach English as a second language through the Aprende Lenguas program at the university, and I had quite the experience. As an undergraduate student, I was able to study abroad in Madrid, and if you guys know anything about Madrid, it's kind of like Spain light, diet Spain, okay? It's such an international city with people from everywhere that no one bats an eye at a Black girl walking through the city. Cuenca, on the other hand, has a population of less than 60,000 people in the city. And within a month, I was probably recognized by everyone as being the only Black girl there. So to talk a little bit about my experiences facing microaggressions and racism, I didn't understand why I was always being approached by men. And I remember one experience of carrying a book bag on my back and walking through a grocery store. My book bag had strings attached to it, and I was just browsing. I looked like an undergraduate student. I had a backpack. And all of a sudden, I feel this force pull me. Someone grabbed the back of my book bag to pull my book bag. I turned around, and there was a random man inviting me to his house, inviting me to engage in sexual contact with him. And I spoke with another person that I met in Cuenca who was originally from Cuenca. And I told him about that encounter that I had with this man in the grocery store. And I told him about other instances where I was being approached by older men, men that were in their 60s and 70s, who wanted to talk to me and invite me to someplace. And he told me, although you are African American, you're Black. And you look like the migrants that come here as sex workers. These men automatically assume because you are a Black woman, you are a migrant here and you are here for sex work. And that was a very humbling experience for me. From then on, when I walked the streets of Cuenca, even though I knew Spanish, I had a bachelor's degree in foreign languages and literature with a concentration in Spanish. Even though I knew Spanish, I used English because I wanted people to mark me as American, as African American, so that I would not be perceived in that way, okay? So let's talk a little bit more about students and Black girls and how they face these issues when they're studying abroad. So why are Black students less likely to study abroad? We have 4 reasons here, but there are quite a few. Despite the increase of minority undergraduate enrollment rates, African American undergraduate students are far less likely to study abroad than their white counterparts. Black students probably make up less than 5% of students that study abroad. White Americans make up less than 65% of US undergraduates, but account for more than 82% of undergraduates who study abroad. For example, in the decade between 1998 and 2008, there was an 8% increase in minority enrollment in university or undergraduate institutions, but only a 3% increase in minority students participating in study abroad programs. And when I say minorities, this includes of all colors, not just Black students. According to Salisbury et al. In a 2011 study, Black undergraduate students are less likely to study abroad for the following reasons. So we have rigid program structures, lack of course requirements, the length of these study abroad programs, lack of family or community support, fear of the unfamiliar, and anxieties about experiencing racism in a foreign country. And I'm here to talk to you guys about those anxieties. Because I can only assume reasonably that their white counterparts do not have these anxieties, I'm going to center these Black anxieties for the rest of these presentation, or the rest of this presentation, and with post-colonial theory. So I draw from these 2 post-colonial theorists. I have Frantz Fanon and his work Black Skin, White Mask, and Edward Said, Orientalism. To understand why Black students fear racism outside of the US, let's take a look at some of these post-colonial theories and these ideas. So in Black Skin, White Mask, Fanon explains the struggle of people of African ancestry to fit into societies that enslaved and or colonized them. Afro-descendants are aware that they are not a part of the dominant group and negotiate their existence to be more like these groups that have oppressed them. Fanon explores how formal colonized subjects compensate for their sense of illegitimacy. And he contributes things like interracial marriages and use of language to the colonized subject's desire to fit into an overall society or the dominant group. Even though he centers this discourse around Martinique, he does not talk about African Americans specifically. We can take these ideas and compare these ideas or use these ideas to talk about Black experiences of African Americans inside the US and around the globe. If we want to move on to Edward Said, Orientalism, even though he centers this on the way that Europe has centered itself as the West and othered Asia and the Middle East, we're also able to apply these ideas to the Black subjects that study abroad and students who are going abroad. So, according to Edward Said, in a post-colonial society, knowledge and colonization is intertwined. So if we think about since the colonial period, these images that we've seen of Black people, of Asian people, these were used for Europeans to establish dominance, global dominance, to separate themselves and to make themselves appear more intelligent, okay? So if we take this in mind and we think about the ways that Europeans have centered themselves, or people of European ancestry have centered themselves as this idea of all education, all class, and have made other groups subhuman, we kind of are able to understand in ways that the ways in which Black students are marginalized when they study abroad. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the experience of a student that I have. So really quickly, this is a WhatsApp thread, and this is from a student that studied abroad with me over the summer in Barcelona. So I'm going to give you guys a second to look at this. So this is an exchange between an African-American student and her host family in Barcelona, Spain, from June 2023. This student has one African parent and one American parent. She was US born, so she is an African-American, and she participated in this program designed for high school students to study abroad across the globe and learn languages. I'm not gonna name the company. The host mother, who received a food stipend for hosting international students, accused this student of stealing food from the refrigerator, accused this student of going through her cabinets and rumbling with her things, despite there being an entire other student in the home. All of these accusations were towards the Black student instead of the other student. So me, being a Black person working this program, I decided to speak with the organization or the local office on this student's behalf. So from day one, she told me about these issues that she was having with her host family. And I went to the local office in Barcelona to speak with the housing coordinator about these issues. This went on for a week. And then the next week, it started to go on again with me speaking on the behalf of the student. I was able to reach out to a colleague of mine who was also in Barcelona working the program, who had to advocate for my behalf on the behalf of the student. And because she has more social value as a white woman, then she was heard and the student was able to move from this host family to a different host family. Once the student moved from the original host family, this lady was from Barcelona, originally from Barcelona. She moved to a host family who originally was from Chile, Santiago de Chile. And this family, I met them, I walked the student in, reported great things about this student. All of these issues that this original host mom had magically disappeared. So they complimented this student about her light humor, how smart she was, how well she practiced Spanish, how creative she was. And I was having exchanges with this host family, and it was quite beautiful. So let's talk about this, because these are things that are not going to go away. But as we saw before, there are so many benefits to studying abroad. So how do we fix this? We have these benefits. So US-born undergraduate students who study abroad are most likely to graduate from undergraduate programs. They're most likely to go on to graduate programs and get graduate degrees. They are more likely to be confident. They are more likely to use these experiences to help navigate them in potential career fields. Okay, so these are the benefits. The benefits are there, and we cannot let African-American students miss out on these opportunities and these benefits because they fear being marginalized in these communities abroad. So I propose that in order for Black students to enjoy studying abroad, the study abroad experience, and to get all of these benefits, that we encourage and promote programs outside of Europe. Okay, so I promote these programs outside of Europe, centering places like Latin America, Asia, Africa for these students, because these areas or these regions have history of colonization. They were once colonized by the Europeans. And although these colonial legacies live on, they are less likely to use those types of aggressions towards students. No place is a utopia, but they are far less likely to use these type of aggressions. And I've seen these firsthand. I've seen this firsthand with our student moving from a host family that was Spanish to a host family that was Latin American. And I've seen this with other Black students in this same program talking about their experiences in other places outside of Europe. They're far much less likely to experience these types of microaggressions. And to exemplify this, I just want to use an example. So in a project called Coloring Up, Exploring Black Students' Decisions to Study in China, this was done by Liu et al. The researchers found that despite being anxious about being victims of racism and microaggressions abroad, 24 Black undergraduate students from a predominantly white institution who study abroad in China did not report instances of prejudices during their program. Black female students even reported confidence boosts as local Chinese people complimented their skin tone and complimented their hair. And these things are two big sources of oppression for Black women in the United States and globally. They even reported preferential treatment to their white counterparts that studied abroad in China. These students also talked about a faculty member that studied with them that gave them this extra support, the support that they needed. So I encourage us as educators to be there for Black students, give them this extra support, and to be vigilant. Pay attention to these types of instances or these types of prejudices that Black students may face while they are abroad. So thank you so much. I appreciate you. Muchas gracias.
So we can have a conversation, Q&A. Do we need a microphone? Probably not. No? Does anybody have any questions for this group? Oh. Great. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Casey, please.
Casey Love from Tulane University. Thank you all for your presentations today. I have lots that I want to talk to all of you about. I have a specific question for Chazika. I was curious when you say rigid program structures are an impediment to Black student participation in study abroad. Can you tell us a little bit more what you mean by that?
Based on the articles that I've read, just like the course requirements or these type of requirements that study abroad programs have in place, kind of dissuade Black students from participating. They feel as if they may not meet the prerequisites for studying abroad. This is why it's important to have staff that are aware of this and encourage these students to participate in these programs because of the benefits.
Any other questions? Yes.
So we added the, can you hear me? Okay, so we added the explicit social justice module, the intentional module, to the second iteration of the Global Scholars Program. But the Global Scholars Program is also focused in sort of automatically on social justice. And so we just tried to be a little more intentional in this one class as preparation to the for our trip to Ecuador, but at the same time, understanding that they were, through the different courses they were taking, there was a lot of dialogue over these courses about social justice. And then being very intentional about working with Sandy and her organization to include this in Ecuador, and also through the readings and through the coursework that we did to really point this out even more intentionally than we had the first time.
Yes.
Would you mind rephrasing the question? Because I don't think we understood it.
So, like, for example, when parents have a lot of social justice issues, a lot of marginalized populations, immigration issues, right? So that creates certain mindsets that students have during these social justice. And when you have international focus, say American students to another country that may be vulnerable to those issues, they have a confidence statement that they have in America, then that's a huge opportunity for those issues greatly into social justice, but not everyday issues.
So I think one of the most important things is to have, and this is another sort of component of the Global Scholars Program, is to have students continuously engaged in this intercultural dialogue. It's really about understanding the social justice issues of the cultures that they're studying, and then also understanding the social justice issues from their own perspective. And where do they see those intersections, and where don't they? And so it's really important to keep both of those things in mind as they are working on this social justice module. So yes, raising awareness about the social justice issues in Ecuador, for example, was key to getting us ready to go down to Ecuador. But at the same time, it's important to create a space where students can also reflect on the social justice issues that they're grappling with at home. And within the cohort, as we try to create this very diverse cohort. That's a really great question, and I think that part of that is making sure that you're looking for the right texts, of course, and so that allow you to do this. But also, there was a lot of dialogue between Sandy and myself and Dr. Jennings-Bryan and talking about how we could make sure that we have a very good transition from the social justice module in the fall to the situation, to our study abroad destination in Ecuador. And then how do we transition back into the coursework in the spring? So I think one of the great things about this program is that we have this overall arc of the entire year in which to really work this in and think about this in the ways that are best going to benefit the students.
Yes. Sí, puede ser. Sí. ¿Puedes repetir, por favor? ¿Sí?
Sí, mi pregunta va dirigida a cómo se puede hacer como una relación entre las personas negras de estos territorios, porque digamos sería muy importante que se pueda hacer como una articulación, no solamente de las personas afroamericanas que vienen de ese contexto, sino que también puedan como entender y poder evidenciar como la experiencia y las vivencias de las personas negras que se encuentran específicamente en ese entorno. Entonces mi pregunta es como cómo se puede hacer esa relación o esa como intercambio de saber entre las personas negras que vienen de intercambio al territorio con las personas negras que se encuentran ya en el territorio específicamente.
And I will translate very quickly or interpret very quickly. She's asking about how do you coordinate an exchange between the Afro descendants of the home country or where they're studying abroad with the African Americans, because she sees it's important that there's an exchange there. And that goes with my question as well. And we talked about this, right? Students studying in the Caribbean, particularly students I've taken to Cuba, the kind of like going to Cuba and being like, oh, being with in this democracy, racial democracy, and being with these Black people, and then realizing they don't understand Blackness in the same way, and there's a lack of communication, there's tension between the two, and how do you foment something like that?
Una cosa interesante es que una persona negra de Estados Unidos, cuando una persona negra de los Estados Unidos va a otro lugar, esa persona es estadounidense. Hay privilegios de ser estadounidense. Por ejemplo, cuando yo estoy en España, hablo inglés porque soy de Estados Unidos. Y después de esto, las personas son, vas a Disney World, ¿cómo es California? ¿Eres de New York? Pues no. Y eso es horrible, es horrible, pero tengo que usar inglés para establecer una posición alta. No es justo, de verdad, no es justo. Y cuando estoy con mis estudiantes, especialmente con mis estudiantes negros, tengo que contarles sobre esas cosas que pasan. Hay personas negras aquí en Colombia y nuestras experiencias van a ser diferentes porque somos estadounidenses. Somos completamente diferentes y tenemos más espacio para hacer cosas que las personas de Colombia no pueden hacer. No es justo. Y eso es la realidad. Y cuando hablo con mis estudiantes sobre las cosas así, tengo que contarles, eso es, like, this is not fair. Pero tenemos que entender nuestra posición. Sí. Oh, sorry. So, as African American students, it doesn't matter where we go because we're privileged, because we are American. The United States passport has so much privilege in comparison to the passports from other countries. So if we do go to places where there are Black students or Black people or there are Black communities, even though we may look like them, we have privilege. And the way that they're able to see this privilege is through the way that we speak. If you have a student that has taken 2 years of Spanish and they go to Mexico, they're going to be like, oh, this is an American. This is not someone who speaks Spanish. If they go to Colombia, this is not an Afro-Colombian. This is an American. We have to treat this person differently because they're from the United States. So although it's not fair, Black students have a privilege when they study abroad. And through their nationality, if they make their nationality known, they're able to kind of avoid the racial injustices that people in those countries may face. There are tons of Black people in Spain. They're from Africa, and they're treated as if they're subhuman. But if I go to Spain, I'm the same complexion as someone from Africa, and I'm speaking English, I get treated as a person that's special. And I make sure that I tell my students that. I make sure that they're aware that there are differences between us and the people that are from there because we are from the United States. Yes, and they are extremely privileged.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question to that? So what I was also understanding from her question is, would it be beneficial, would this perhaps create more interest for African-American students to study abroad, or more motivation, or more, or greater likelihood to do so, if there was a specific focus in the program in these non-traditional places on interacting with Afro-Latino communities? Would that be, do you think that could be a motivating factor?
Yes, I do believe that. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of programs that center Blackness in study abroad or center Black people for international education programs. So those programs are fairly hard to find. And if you go to any university in the United States, it's very rare that they will offer programs that center Blackness. So I hope that us as educators we're able to understand this and kind of like work towards including the African diaspora in education abroad, because it is important, not only for us as like African-American students who are interested in study abroad, but also for the local communities to get this exchange with Americans that are not white, because there's this overwhelming idea that Americans or people from the United States are white. And I think that the world deserves to experience the African-American experience. They deserve to be able to have conversations with us. We're able to share our struggles and to talk about the things that we have in common and the things that are different.
We have time for one more question. Yes.
So when I work with students that look like me, I don't really have a methodology. It's something about Black people, especially Black people from the United States. We feel or we find comfort in other Black people when we're in very white spaces. So if we're in a very white space and there's another Black person there, there's just this automatic feeling of relief because we are anxious about racism and microaggressions in the United States and outside of the United States. So having a Black person as a teacher or a leader, they just automatically feel comfortable in sharing any type of experiences with me, especially if they are experiencing any type of racism, microaggressions. And I make sure that I go above and beyond to support these students, to check in on them, to make sure that they are okay, because I know that they are vulnerable to these types of encounters.
So the importance of representation, for sure. Absolutely. And I think we're done. That's it. We're good. Okay. Thank you very much, y'all. That was absolutely wonderful to start us off. Thank y'all.
Thanks, everyone. I know we didn't get to all the questions, but what's great about AAPLAC is we build in these breaks and coffee hours so that you can have one-on-one time. So I invite you to use the restroom to continue these talks with the panelists. There's coffee outside, and we'll start again at 11:30.
What is the most beautiful thing about Colombia? What is its true beauty? People are everything. And while sailing a river that runs through the jungle becoming the sea, you can hear more than 65 indigenous native languages. How is a country not going to be beautiful when in it you can taste a different fruit every day of the year? Thanks to the hard work of our farmers who bring food to the table of Colombians and tables of the whole world. We are proud of our 3 mountain ranges, but much more of our cyclists who conquer them in the longest mountain peak in the world. Here, the wind brings an aura of progress. This same wind talks to 1,900 species of birds and tells them which tree they need to reach in order to be seen. Our beautiful islands emerge from 2 oceans, and from our islands, a new union is born. Look at our mountains, and look at the acres that remain to be cultivated. And speaking of green, breathe easy, because we are a lung of the world. We live in midst of the beauty that changes every day, where the past, the present, and the future coexist in every region. A generous beauty for everyone wishing to see it. Who comes for business ends up staying for pleasure. Who comes for pleasure finds business opportunities. This is our invitation. Come for the first time or come back from wherever you are and tour the country to continue discovering Colombia, the country of beauty.
En Cali no se camina, en Cali se baila. Y hoy Bailamos al ritmo de la COP16 porque estamos orgullosos de representar a Colombia. Fuimos escogidos como la sede del encuentro de biodiversidad más importante del mundo, en donde más de 12.000 representantes de 180 países no solo hablarán de biodiversidad y acordarán acciones para protegerla, sino que la vivirán. Porque en este majestuoso rincón del planeta se reúne la riqueza de la biodiversidad, el conocimiento ancestral y la vida en todas sus manifestaciones. Hacemos parte de la región pacífica colombiana y del Chocó biogeográfico, que con sus montañas, selvas, extensos valles, mar, páramos y humedales, mágicos bosques tropicales y bosques de niebla, reservas naturales y áreas protegidas, nos ubican en una de las regiones más biodiversas del mundo y donde los verdaderos guardianes han sido las comunidades indígenas y afro. Cuando llegues a Cali, la capital mundial de la salsa, descubrirás que tus parejas de baile tienen forma de río, de aves, de árboles, de animales sorprendentes, de flores, para que juntos hagamos una coreografía perfecta que inspire al mundo a unirnos en el cuidado, la preservación y el respeto hacia nuestra biodiversidad y a quienes juraron protegerla. Bienvenidos a la COP16 Cali 2024. Llegó el momento de ponernos en paz con la naturaleza.
Colombia, potencia de la vida.
Did you think it was impossible to find the largest planetarium of the world? We are talking about the Colombian Massif, the region of the Tatacoa Desert. A little further north, you will find vineyards like those of Tejo. But if you go south, you'll be dazzled by incredible views of mountains of green and red cherries, of coffee plantations, and ancestral cultures. But go a little further south and discover how some of the ancestral people carved an incredible story in stone. In the same land where, according to legends, is the waterfall of the end of the world. And the white city of Colombia, spiritual heritage of Colombia and the world. And if you thought that this tour ended, you will be surprised with all the beauty of the sanctuary of Las Lajas. Just look at it. It is beautiful. Stop scrolling your screen. We are waiting for you here in the Colombian Massif. Colombia, the country of beauty. Can you hear him? It is the song of a traveler that after hundreds of kilometers is able to settle with his family in the Colombian Pacific. But if you keep listening, you'll be able to distinguish the sound of the marimba and the shoes of hundreds of people dancing salsa rhythm. And have a story to tell. That of a passion that comes from their roots. You will hear the carnival festivities that celebrate their diversity, their memory and love for their culture. You will visit extensive beaches in contrast with delightful waterfalls. Colombia, the country of beauty. This is Colombia, a very beautiful country. When I wondered what is behind so much beauty, I discovered something I hadn't seen before. It goes beyond likes and Photoshop. I discovered a different kind of beauty. Look at this bird and its colors in this slow motion shot. But like this bird, there are hundreds, thousands more. Because this is the best sky for them to fly in. And here, the ecosystems are perfect for them. I was surprised when I learned that the most beautiful river in the world is beautiful because it blooms. I know it's hard to believe, but it's true. It blooms to protect itself so it can preserve itself in this spectacular way. I understood why the Caribbean is called the Great Caribbean. Because in addition to beautiful beaches and 7-colored seas, it has a Sierra Nevada. Have you seen this? As well as a lost city, a river that becomes the sea, and a town that inspired our Nobel Prize writer. Tell me if this is not amazing. They come from the other side of the sea, only to discover a beauty never seen before. Here, your itinerary doesn't begin with a formal speech, but with the sound of the sea, with the smell of coffee, or with bird songs. Here, your itinerary doesn't come to an end, because the excitement never ends. The waterfall of the end of the world is where our oldest civilization, the Andean culture, begins. They allow us to enter into their house. We have a green beating heart that gives life to forests, plains, sunsets, and fauna. A heart that we protect and care for so that it remains full of life and beauty. Our beauty is so different and generous that it is formed by 2 Andes, mountains full of coffee, flowers, and unique villages to walk in. Andes Mountains with modern cities surrounded by life, water, sacred moors, beauty that is there waiting to be admired. The Pacific Ocean is so beautiful and warm that they come to visit us, and their song is so beautiful. Speaking of songs in the Pacific Ocean, listen to this. And look at this. This is the Pacific, so peaceful, rhythmic, flavorful, and not just when you dance salsa, but when you prepare it as well. A mix of culture you don't see anywhere else. This is another kind of beauty, an interior one that surprises us, that we had not seen before, a new beauty that invites us to protect it, to preserve it, to be sustainable with it. A beauty that endures, that we want everyone to live in, and that we want to show the world. Colombia, the country of beauty.
En Cali no se camina, en Cali se baila. Y hoy bailamos al ritmo de la COP16 porque estamos orgullosos de representar a Colombia. Fuimos escogidos como la sede del encuentro de biodiversidad más importante del mundo, en donde más de 12.000 representantes de 180 países no solo hablarán de biodiversidad y acordarán acciones para protegerla, sino que la vivirán. Porque en este majestuoso rincón del planeta se reúne la riqueza de la biodiversidad, el conocimiento ancestral y la vida en todas sus manifestaciones. Hacemos parte de la región pacífica colombiana y del Chocó biogeográfico, que con sus montañas, selvas, extensos valles, mar, páramos y humedales, mágicos bosques tropicales y bosques de niebla, reservas naturales y áreas protegidas, nos ubican en una de las regiones más biodiversas del mundo y donde los verdaderos guardianes han sido las comunidades indígenas y afro. Cuando llegues a Cali, la capital mundial de la salsa, descubrirás que tus parejas de baile tienen forma de río, de aves, de árboles, de animales sorprendentes, de flores, para que juntos hagamos una coreografía perfecta que inspire al mundo a unirnos en el cuidado, la preservación y el respeto hacia nuestra biodiversidad y a quienes juraron protegerla. Bienvenidos a la COP16 Cali 2024. Llegó el momento de ponernos en paz con la naturaleza.
Hello. How are you? Good. How's everything going? Okay, for those who would like to go deeper in the communication program and who would like to visit the facilities of the broadcast, so at 12, the dean, Catalina, is going to take one person that already said that is interested. So the ones who would like to join that group would be welcome. It's going to be at 12. Okay, great. Something else, if you're interested in getting in contact with the deans of architecture or with the deans of administration or engineering or so, most welcome.
Hi, everyone. We're going to get started again. Kathleen, our moderator, is coming on up. I'm going to call people. Don't let me fall, but I'm going to call people in. And again, all of our presentations for this round will be in English. Todas las presentaciones de esa ronda también están en inglés. Si alguien necesita traducción, por favor, avísame. ¿Hay alguien más que sintió que necesita un poco de ayuda con la traducción? ¿O estamos bien? Ya, perfecto. All right, I think, Kathleen,
Welcome to our session. And I'd like to say welcome to the 30th AAPLAC. It's the 30th anniversary of AAPLAC. Yeah, the first one was in 1994 in Quito. And so I'd also like to take just a second to express love and gratitude to those who are not here, who have been fundamental to forming AAPLAC and CDI. Steve Willie of Augustana College and CDI, McGregor O'Brien of Frostburg and CDI, and Jerry St. Martin of Salisbury and CDI. So I have a powerhouse here to introduce. Amazing people. So I'll read you the bios of the 4 people, and then we'll start the virtual presentations. David Osgood is at Albright College. He received his PhD in environmental science from the University of Virginia. His research has focused on natural marsh development in Mid-Atlantic and Southeast U.S. barrier islands with an emphasis on subsurface hydrology, nutrient dynamics, and their influence on the developing plant community. His research also includes the study of phragmites and other invasive plant species and their impact on hydrology, biogeochemistry, and fish habitat use marshes in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic U.S. More recently, he conducts research on headwaters, streams, and floodplain wetlands of coastal watersheds with an emphasis on restoration. He is a full professor at Albright College in the biology department and serves as the director of the environmental science program. He teaches courses in ecology, wetlands, and watersheds, environmental issues of Latin America, and is collaborating with a visual artist on a course focused on tropical ecology in Central America. Kristen T. Woodward, also of Albright College. She received her BFA in printmaking from Syracuse University and her MFA in studio art from Clemson University. Her zoomorphic paintings combine encaustic and print processes and often utilize found collage materials. Woodward is currently a professor in the Department of Art and Art History at Albright College, teaching drawing and painting, printmaking, and gender and the visual arts. Currently, she's collaborating with an environmental biologist to explore tropical ecosystems in Costa Rica. Woodward serves as resident curator for the online site Artists to Artists. Katja Kolbeck, James Madison University. Dr. Kolbeck holds a PhD in second language acquisition, foreign language education from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and a master's degree in linguistics from Charles University, Prague, Czech Republic. She is a professor and teaching English to speakers of other languages, coordinator at James Madison University. She teaches both undergraduate and graduate courses in TESOL programs at James Madison, such as second language acquisition, methods of teaching English as a second language, and language assessment for multilingual learners. Her research interests include pre-service teacher attitudes and beliefs, the use of action, and the use of action research in teacher education, high-impact practices and student engagement, and culturally responsive and sustaining practices. She has presented regionally, nationally, and internationally. She is a teacher education SIG leader at Virginia TESOL Association, member at large of the Virginia National Association of Multicultural Educators, and is a co-chair-elect of the Standards Professional Council at the TESOL International Association. Olman Vargas Rojas, Green Forest School. Olman Vargas Rojas nace en la provincia de Heredia, en Costa Rica. Una vez que se gradúa en una secundaria en su ciudad, estudia Psychology en la Universidad de Costa Rica, en San José, la capital. Se especializa en psicología en Inglaterra con una especialidad en orientación juvenil. Inició mi trabajo como psicólogo educativa en diferentes instituciones educativas de Costa Rica desde el año 1991 hasta el año 2004. Realiza una maestra de liderazgo educativo en Framingham State University de Massachusetts. También obtiene la certificación como administrador de la Organización de Bachillerato Internacional, lo que le permite ser director en colegios internacionales. A partir del año 2005, es director de escuelas y colegios bilingües internacionales en San José, Costa Rica. Actualmente es el director de Green Forest School en San Carlos, Costa Rica. He trabajado como consultor educativo, ha dado seminarios y conferencias en diferentes organizaciones de Costa Rica. And Sharon Roberts, Xavier University of Louisiana. Sharon has a PhD and is an associate professor of mass communication and affiliate faculty member in African America and Diaspora Studies at Xavier University in New Orleans. She has published on the role of the media in post-disaster communities and has studied and published on Haitian media during and after the 2010 Haiti earthquake and new media use in Cuba. She studies the impact of digital media across the Caribbean and Latin America and representations of race and gender in the media. She is co-author of Oil and Water, Media Lessons from Hurricane Katrina and the Deepwater Horizon oil disaster, and co-editor of HBO's Treme and Post-Katrina Catharsis, The Mediated Rebirth of New Orleans. She has worked as a reporter in Latin America and the Caribbean and holds a PhD in Latin American Studies from Tulane University's Stone Center for Latin American Studies. Welcome all of you, and we'll start. And Hannah, yeah.
We'll start with the virtual presentation. So we're going to do a quick change while we work on resolving the virtual. So I'm going to invite Sharon Roberts to the stage to present her presentation first. Yay!
Buenos días, es un placer presentar hoy. Good day, it's a pleasure to present to you today. And first, I will present 3 short videos that I think help to sum up the theme of my presentation today. Voy a hacer mi presentación en español y en inglés, y hay 3 videos cortos para presentar a usted. Y el otro.
Con tu física, tu química, también baja tu mía. La cerveza y el tequila y tu boca con la mía. Ya no puedo más, ya no puedo más, ya no puedo más, ya no puedo más. Con esta melodía, tu cuerpo que ya se hacía. Con tu filosofía, mi cabeza está vacía. Ya no puedo más, ya no puedo más. Yo quiero estar contigo, vivir contigo, bailar contigo, tener una noche loca. Ay, besarte. Yo quiero estar contigo, vivir contigo, bailar contigo, tener una noche loca, con tremenda nota. Oh, 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 oh,
It wasn't what we expected at all. Here we are in this foreign place, but life seems so familiar. I see people who look just like us and act just like us. The only difference is we don't speak the same language. It made us realize that we could have easily ended up right here.
What we can see from TV shows, movies, is that Afro-American people is most related to the crime, to bad issues. I mean, they are not the.
Okay. So those were a few of the videos that showcase some of the experiences that I had created for my students. I am a professor at a historically Black university, and I've been able to take my students on encounters with Latin America in Cuba. In Cuba and in Brazil, Haiti, Belize, Peru, Costa Rica, the Dominican Republic, Trinidad and Tobago, and I will also mention Ghana. And I mention Ghana because there are Latin American encounters for students in West Africa, primarily because there are Afro, Latin American, and Caribbean communities that are being formed and forged in West Africa and in Ghana. So it's interesting for students to see this meaning of Latin American peoples outside of the region reforming back on the continent. Okay, so I go to, all right. So first of all, why HBCUs? Los estudiantes afroamericanos son los que tienen menos probabilidades de estudiar en el extranjero y también de tener pasaporte. Para todos mis alumnos, este fue su primer viaje al extranjero o su primer viaje a América Latina. For many of my students, this was their first time traveling to Latin America and also their first time having a passport. Estas conexiones entre los HBCU y América Latina y el Caribe son históricas y continúan hoy. Aquí está el presidente de la Universidad de Howard. Él es de Trinidad y Tobago y aquí el otro está el presidente de mi universidad. Él es haitiano. So the president of Howard University, he stepped down since. He is background Trinidad and Tobago. And the president of my university on that end is Haitian. And so many of the leaders of HBCUs want students to have global encounters with Latin America because they are born and raised in that region. So there's strong support for that as well. También en Nueva Orleans tenemos fuertes conexiones históricamente y hoy con América Afro-Latina que nuestros estudiantes pueden ver y aprender en nuestra comunidad. What we try to show is that Latin America is all around our students here in New Orleans, and it's another reason why we want our students to encounter the region. También empiezo por enseñar también a mis alumnos que muchos de los famosos negros que consideran afroamericanos también son afro-latinoamericanos, como estas celebridades. My students are always surprised to learn that many of the African Americans that they adore and think are black are Afro-Latinos. And these are ways to start to introduce them to say, I want to study abroad. I want to encounter Blackness outside of an African American experience. ¿Qué quieren los estudiantes afroamericanos de universidades históricamente negras en sus encuentros con América Latina? Quieren profundamente entender la negritud en la diáspora, qué es similar y qué es diferente y por qué. They want to understand what is Blackness in a Latin American diasporic sense. What do they share in common with people who are Black in Latin America? And what is different? Quieren ver conexiones históricas. Aquí en Brasil es un ejemplo. Están aprendiendo sobre este puerto de esclavos, tal como Nueva Orleans fue un importante puerto de esclavos también. So here in Brazil, my students are learning about this very important port that was sort of covered up, that history was buried in Rio de Janeiro. And they're learning from one of the few Black woman professors in Rio who is in the history department and a full-time professor there, who we were connected to thanks to our partnership with Tulane. And so this is our students learning here at this port spot, also being able to see those similarities in New Orleans, which was a major port spot for entryway for Africans, enslaved Africans into North America. All right, what else? Quieren explorar la cultura afro y su influencia en estos países. Aquí en Cuba y Brasil están explorando las influencias africanas en el arte, la danza y la cultura de carnaval. They want to also learn about culture and how the African identity is preserved and reflected and influencing and shaping Latin American culture. Particularly, New Orleans has a big carnival. Carnival is a big part of life and experiences in Latin America. And so this cultural immersion, but from an Afrocentric perspective, is very important for our students. Quieren aprender sobre los movimientos sociales en las que están participando su generación de jóvenes negros, desde la pobreza hasta el acceso a la educación y la movilidad económica. They also want to know about social movements that those young people in Latin America are engaged with that are similar to them. Many of my students come from low-income backgrounds. Education and access to education is important to them. Upward economic mobility for themselves, their families, and their communities is also something important, and they want to encounter that when they travel to Latin America. Quieren pasar su tiempo en comunidades negras y indígenas y realizar proyectos de servicio en esas comunidades. If they want to do some kind of service learning project, they want those to be rooted in Black and Indigenous communities. Here is one of my students here in Peru with Indigenous and Afro-Indigenous communities. She is going to med school and wants to be a global doctor, and this experience allows her to connect to Black and Indigenous Peruvians by understanding what health inequities they face, while also giving her professional experience as a future physician. Let's see. Quieren compartir historias importantes sobre la vida de los negros en América Latina. Aquí mis alumnos documentan las deportaciones de dominicanos de ascendencia haitiana y también cuentan sobre las aspiraciones de los de los artistas cubanos negros. They also want to be able to document and be part of writing histories about people and some of the injustices that they see or some of the aspirations that they see. To your left, my students were part of a nonprofit group that were working with Dominicans of Haitian descent who were being deported at the border between Haiti and the Dominican Republic. And my students are producing evidence of those deportations and helping to resettle those families. On this side, my students were covering how Afro-inspired art is providing an economic means for Afro artists in Cuba, and how that also is connected to their experiences in New Orleans. Quieren compartir experiencias de jóvenes en la universidad y lo que significa ser negro. Aquí en Brasil están aprendiendo de un joven negro de las favelas, lo que significa ser el primero en su familia en ir y terminar la universidad. Muchos de mis estudiantes provienen de familias de bajos recursos económicos y son los primeros en su familia en ir a la universidad. So they want to also understand what does it mean to be the first, what laws protect them. This is one of the first students to benefit from affirmative action in Brazil. Affirmative action is being stripped away in the United States context. My students were able to understand what it means to be first in your community, what it means to get a job, what discriminations you face. And this young Afro-Brazilian man is explaining why those laws were beneficial to him to go to college, to graduate, and hopefully to get a job. También quieren establecer conexiones personales duraderas, no solo interacciones turísticas con personas de América Latina. Muchas de las personas de ascendencia africana que mis alumnos han conocido ahora son parte de su familia más grande y se mantienen en contacto con mis alumnos. Aquí, uno de mis alumnos se mantuvo en contacto con ella después de que ella la ayudó a encontrar el lado cubano de su familia. Here is one of my students who is part Cuban, part African-American, and this is her working with an Afro-Cuban woman, and they together did a project to track down the Cuban side of her family, and now she is part of her extended and wider family. They do not see these counters as sort of touristic encounters. They want these counters to be deep, rich connections with Afro-Latinos. Y al final, ¿qué quieren encontrar los estudiantes de universidades históricamente negras cuando experimentan América Latina? What exactly do Black students wish to encounter when they choose to experience Latin America through study abroad and other forms of global learning? Ultimately, they want to encounter Blackness, la negritud en la diáspora. Es profundamente la razón por qué hace estas experiencias. It's primarily the main things that inform how they want to encounter and experience Latin America. Gracias por escuchar mi presentación y agradezco sus preguntas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our talk. Thank you for being here. My name is David Osgood. I am one. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our talk. Thank you for being here. My name is David Osgood. I am one half of the teaching partnership for the course that we're going to be talking to you about. I have been here at Albright College for 22 years, and I teach in the biology department, specifically the environmental sciences program.
And I'm the other half of the team. My name is Kristen Woodward. I'm a professor of art in the Department of Art and Art History. And we've been collaborating on this project since 2017, when Dr. Brian Jennings, our colleague at Albright, invited us down to Costa Rica, invited us to the college's property down there in Rio, it was called Rio de Sueños, down in the Coronado province. And you can see on the map, it's down in the southwestern area of the country. And the reason we were invited down there is to explore what opportunities we could use out of Costa Rica, how we could utilize the property for our teaching. And we both got very excited about it and decided we could offer a course that combined both of them.
So the course that we offer is part of our general education curriculum, or our common curriculum. And it's specifically what we refer to as a synthesis class, which, as you can see depicted here, is a capstone to the total general education curriculum, which does start off at the foundation level, where students are exposed to at least one course in the fine arts and another course in the natural sciences. So we know that they've been introduced to at least the basics there. The synthesis course is really about bringing together different disciplines to view content through a different lens. At the same time, the students are required to draw from their previous general education experiences, as well as draw on their own interests and experiences through their majors, their co-majors, or their minors.
So you're looking at a student drawing now, and the course uses field experiences, going out and engaging in a scientific method, as well as doing studio work. So it's a very exploratory course where David and I are both students in the course as well. I'm learning about ecology, which I have no formal training in, and David's doing the drawing assignments as well. So we have a lot of discussion based on readings, based on the field of work we're doing. And there's also an opportunity for cultural study, which we're going to get into in a little bit. So there are some challenges with the course. So David mentioned that every student that takes a synthesis course has to have a foundation course in science and in art, but art is capital A art. So they may have taken their foundation art class in music or theater. So we spend a good bit of time in the beginning of the course really introducing students to visual arts and ecology, kind of bringing them into our discipline. So we then had to decide on a sub-discipline, essentially, to focus on. So we weren't dealing with such large subject matter. And we also have the challenges of travel. Not only are we competing with other colleagues who are offering courses, but actually using the property down in Costa Rica. And then, of course, there's just the regular challenges that come from traveling with students.
So the elements of the course, we rotate between different themes. And this time around, for example, we're using an evolutionary theme. But no matter what the theme is, we always end up with tropical ecology as the subject matter, and specifically how the indigenous people, the Baruca, fit into that. We do have to begin with some of the basics, as Professor Woodward referred to earlier. And so we start off with natural history, where art and science were sort of married together out of necessity. And we introduce these things at the beginning level and then culminate into some more elements that require more critical thinking, more creative expression, and so forth, such as an outdoor installation, as depicted here in this image. And then ultimately to a mixed media project, which is at the very end of the semester, where the students are required to tie it all together and link it back to their general education as well as their own individual major. So the assignments, we do have carryover assignments throughout the entire semester, in particular a sketchbook and a field book to represent the art and the natural sciences side. We train the students in how best to do those, and then they ultimately culminate in the portfolio that the students have at the end, chronicling their whole entire experience. We do a lot of readings which are based in natural history and some other subject matter, and we spend some time analyzing those readings. One of our exciting case studies that we do is a study of the Chabot Cave, where 30,000+ years ago, it's thought to be the original human art, the first documentation, at least, of humans doing art. And the beauty of it is that they are depicting ecology through that art. So it's a great case study. And then we've already mentioned the multimedia final project, where we really have the students do that final synthesis component of the class.
Yeah, so drawing from observation is where we begin. Like, we just left the class today and they were drawing ginkgo leaves and learning about the evolutionary history of the ginkgo tree, which I learned about for the first time too. But a little bit later in the semester, we'll be doing a project that we've offered before, where I give all the students a map of Pennsylvania, a paper map, and ask them to draw from what they know about the readings, from their own observations, and tell me something about the ecology of the area in which they live. And so this student, a biology student, chose to emphasize where power plants are located in Pennsylvania. And interestingly enough, they usually don't appear on maps. But the heart of the course is really going back to the Baruka. So the Baruka, being this indigenous community, was somebody we encountered when we were there in 2017. And they were very eager to share their history with us, their culture. They wanted us to bring information about them to the rest of the world and have us appreciate their masks. It's a beautiful art form where the men, just the men of the community, carve their own masks and paint them. And they perform a ceremony, the Dance of the Devils, that essentially is a reenactment of the resistance to the Spanish conquest, to the colonists that came in the 16th century. And they're really amazing pieces. They use these complementary colors, opposites on the color wheel, to show antagonism and conflict. And we talk about how those color systems and patterns are also used in nature.
So there's also a performance aspect to what the Baruka are doing. So they each individualize their own costuming, and then that's all worked into a total performance, but meant to be a reenactment of that colonial contact. So there's a lot of emotion expressed through that, whether it's anger, confusion, and at the same time, it illustrates how the Baruka are connected to the natural elements of the earth and have this innate sense of natural science, even though they might not be professional scientists. So for example, in the performance, you can see depicted here, lying prostrate on the ground here, is actually a human figure underneath all of those leaves, where there was a portrayal of a death and then the return of the nutrient elements back to the soil and then re-emerging as in this case plant life. So there's a very transformative nature interwoven with the expression of these different emotions surrounding the conflict, which we thought was a very intriguing idea.
So again, this is kind of ripe for an opportunity for us to explore other ideas that come from our study of the Baruka, like how does tourism and ecotourism intersect with their beliefs and their goals as a community? And if they have, in fact, a homogeneous sense of goals and ideas about how that information is disseminated, we question whether or not the Baruka masks are fine art, craft, or something else. And we also talk about how the works of the ancient artists differ from contemporary artists, both of contemporary Baruka and other contemporary artists in Costa Rica and here at home. We look at earthworks of the 1970s and compare them to Baruka spheres. So there's a lot of kind of crossover and moving back between past and present.
So the students are then released to create their own mask drawings inspired by the Baruka masks. And we provide the students with specimens, skulls, birds, insect collections, and so forth. And we encourage the students to express themselves through that work. So Abby, for example, here was an environmental studies student. And she chose to use color and shading, but kept the skull sort of as the central focus to her mask, but then added other color features to it. Here, Olivia, who was actually a biochemistry student, had a bit more of a spiritual background and almost like a druidic nature, and that came out in her mask drawing, we felt. It has sort of this kind of tree beard sort of expression to it. And then there's a little bit of insect, with the lepidopteran and the butterfly imagery going on there. And then one of my favorites was by Nick, who was actually a fashion student, who decided to incorporate a little bit more into the mask. Again, that skull front and center, but also incorporating in bird feathers, a bird on the top of the skull, and then mushrooms emerging from the eye sockets to sort of depict that idea of regeneration and within the environment. And there's even a little bit of a nod to the insect world with the butterflies imposed on there as well.
So finally, you're looking at a work by an upper level art major who decided to take it further than what we covered in our class. And she did a senior honors thesis project a couple of years ago, inspired by her travels down to Rio de Sueños in Costa Rica. And we collaborated actually on some works that overlapped in terms of shamanic beliefs and human-animal hybrid and transformation. And she's got a really great video you can see of her making this work, which was actually highlighted on the AAPLAC website last year. So that's what we have to show you for our course. We're hoping that you can see how art and sciences overlapped and how we really brought students to our discipline to see where they intersect and where they don't, where they diverge.
So thank you again, and we look forward to your questions, any questions as to how our course links into our curriculum, what were our inspirations, anything. We look forward to, there's so much more to talk about with the course. So we look forward to some discussion. Thank you.
Also have virtually the virtual panelists who you'll see in a second. So you can ask questions to oh, I'm sorry.
Here. This. Yeah.
All right. So my name is Katja Kolbeck, and I am from James Madison University. And unfortunately, my partner, principal of Green Forest Bilingual School, cannot be here. He is in Costa Rica, and I do have some privilege that the university pays for me to attend conferences, while in his case, the school cannot afford. So he expresses his regards, and he wishes that he could be here, but I will try my best to represent us both. And this presentation will be in English, but you will also see some Spanish, especially reflections from Olman Vargas. So our presentation is, as you can see, bridging cultures and classrooms, experiential learning of pre-service teachers in Costa Rica, in a bilingual school in Costa Rica. And I'm navigating in between two computers because this one plus mine where I can actually see. So we decided to explore our connections to and beliefs about study abroad programs for pre-service teachers, and our shared professional and personal international experience fueled our curiosity. We sought to unravel the complexities of study abroad programming and broader global engagement. And for that, we chose dual ethnography. And dual ethnography is collaborative research methodology in which two or more researchers of difference juxtapose their life histories to provide multiple understandings. We embarked on a study with the expectations that of holding each other accountable and remaining critical when examining our experiences with the study abroad programs that took place in Costa Rica during the summers of 2022 and 2023. Despite our international experiences, we welcome this research study as an opportunity to reflect on our approaches to global education for pre-service teachers and our abilities to center local community voices in our pedagogy and program management. As you can see from this quote, a lot of American students have that entitlement, that they have to travel because, to consume, because that's, they have the means, they have the privileges, and we wanted to make sure that, I don't know where the thing went. Okay, thank you. So we wanted to make sure that students reflect on their preconceived notions and see themselves in a different light through the lens of cultural norms which are, they're experiencing. So critical reflection became the forefront of our pedagogy. So since it's dual ethnography, we decided to share the slide where you can see who we are. And on the right side, white, cisgender, teacher, educator. I've organized 12 study abroad programs at the current university as well at the different university in Iowa. Born in the Soviet Union, raised in two countries, Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic later, and my home country. And then for the last 27 years, I've been in the United States. So received my PhD there, while you can see Olman has also international experience, native of Costa Rica, but he received his degree from the Great Britain as well as the United States. Yeah? So we felt that it would give us an opportunity to look at us through our lens, how our students are grappling with cultural norms and what meaning making they're assigning to those norms. So again, starting with our beliefs was important for us. And you can see what I believe, that our students with, potentially disrupt some of those preconceived notions about their role as educators and the role of their students, and also maybe position English not as a dominant language, and not look at bilingualism through monoglossic lens. While Olman in Spanish, of course, and that's another thing, we want this presentation to be in both languages, and not even knowing that's basically the norm here, because this is the first experience for us. As you can see that his ideas, what he believed were cross-cultural understanding, immersion, mutual benefits, and many more. So how it all started. In 2018, a university alum reached out to me, and I was a brand new associate professor at this particular university. It was brand new. And so I never had this student. She reached out and she wanted to have, experience my students teach in her bilingual school, as well as potentially for them to stay and work there. So in 2019, I traveled to Costa Rica with my son, fourth grade student at that time, and he experienced the schooling as a student. So not only did I look at this from a professor's perspective, but also want to hear what my son had to say. And I was sold, because that was the best experience I've ever had, where we felt welcome. And my son didn't even want to go back home. He said, "Can I stay here? Can our plane be late so we can stay here?" That's how profound it was. But due to the pandemic, we couldn't materialize our study abroad in 2020 and 2021, so it became the reality in 2022. And the first cohort of students were quite diverse female students, with 3 of them being Latinas who were bilingual in Spanish and English. There was also an Asian descent student and Native American descent student, but others identified as white. In 2023, we repeated the same experience, but with a different cohort. But that time, all were monolingual, all identified as white, and the majority of them were females, except 1 male student. Now, during about the school has approximately 260 students from different descent, international and national, and around 28 instructors. It's located, and it's very important to also understand, it's located not in San Jose, but actually in a rural area, which could be a culture shock to some of my American students. The school has all the grades from preschool, 3 years old, to 11th. And the model is like 50-50. 50% of instruction is in Spanish, 50% is in English. Now, regarding English language instructors, the majority of them are from the US. However, they have no background in education, and specifically bilingual education. But not every English teacher was from the US. And we have experienced what our students have experienced some tensions with that as well. So, and I'll talk about in a short while. So pre-departure, we try to do as much as possible to have weekly meetings at least 3 months in advance, to talk about cultural norms, expectations, travel preparation. My JMU alum, who actually is an assistant principal, would Zoom with us, would explain what to expect, how to expect, what to wear, what not to wear. And she also connected our students with host families. During our stay, and it was a 4-week study abroad, with first week traveling, and the last 3 weeks were teaching in this dual language school. When we were in the school, I taught a methods course, and each day, and the methods course was accompanied with reflections and discussions. And our students also did a practicum where they actually studied with observations, and then like co-teaching, and then teaching in the school with different teachers. So they also experienced co-planning. Now, what the results showed, when we think about perceptions of pre-service teachers about schooling, you can see that some of them have embraced different cultural norms, the way the school operates, the way the school sees classroom management and parental involvement, while others had a hard time understanding that, and had a hard time actually accepting. They viewed the school through the US-centric norms, thus challenging the personnel's approaches to schooling. As you can see, if this had happened in the US, parents would have sued the school. I heard those sentiments, or teachers don't really know how to manage kids here. And to disrupt that narrative, Ullman principal would come to our class and talk about the policies, talk about why they do what they do. But regardless of those conversations, they still held their ground, and that mentality that this should not be happening, this would not be acceptable. Some students counted their peers, reminding them that it's not our place since we're guests here, and we don't know how the system works in order to judge it. So Ullman reflected that our students have a lot of they might have that arrogant attitude, and you don't see that quote, but in translation, university students might adopt an arrogant attitude, assuming that they know a lot and that the education they received in the US surpasses that of Costa Rican teachers, which is a fallacy. And what you see the quote here is talking about how, since they don't have military, all the money goes into education and teachers are well educated. But some of my students, and surprisingly, shockingly, one of the Latina students had a hard time reconciling the way the school works with her perception of how it should work. Now, another finding we had regarding pre-service teachers' experience with host families, host community. So it also varied. The first cohort, which, as I mentioned before, was more diverse, embraced the opportunity to explore the community independently and inviting their peers to join. And some also host families who were proficient in English chose to converse in Spanish with these pre-service teachers, fostering closer bonds. So the cohort engaged deeply with their host families, joining in their children's sports and extracurricular activities, and accompanying them on shopping trips and meals out. And our interactions with school personnel and host families revealed that the community members also formed deeper relationships with the first, it to their outgoing personalities and eagerness to learn from and with the community. Furthermore, the proficiency in Spanish and familiarity with local cultural norms facilitated stronger connections with community members. However, our second cohort, who were monolingual, had a harder time connecting with the community members. They were more reserved, less willing to explore. They preferred to stay home to catch up on their sleep. As a reminder, school started at 7 o'clock in the morning, so we all had to be up at 5:30. And so inevitably, yes, they were sleep deprived a bit, so to catch up on their sleep, homework, or conversation with the families and friends at home. And so that decision prevented them from learning about the community outside of school and being fully integrated into their host families' activities. And so, as you can see here, Ullman's reflection that we need to make sure, since my students were, and I was staying with the host family, I was actually staying with Ullman in his household. They need to manage, and they need to, it's bi-directional, yeah? So they need to follow the norms of the family members, but also share theirs. And while the second cohort may have had a less noticeable impact on the community outside of school, they believe their influence on the students at the school was more profound and enduring. And that's one of the last themes that emerged, pre-service teachers' perceptions on pedagogy. So to our delight, that we were really pleased that they put the students at the core of their instruction, at the core of their lesson planning. They try to integrate their diverse cultural experiences, their interests, thus showing their inclination towards culturally responsive pedagogy. And even though the second cohort was not proficient or did not even have any Spanish, they try to support their students prioritizing Spanish, allowing them to use Spanish, and not like dividing the class into two like monoglossic views, like Spanish belongs to this class and English belongs to that. So my students wrestled with the concept of translanguaging and its potential impact on bilingual students. So the strengths, as we can see, the students have started to develop that cultural humility. They challenged the monoglossic perspective, and they showed the enactment of cultural responsive pedagogy by centering students at the core of the instruction. But when we think about the implications, even though critical reflection was part of both programs, they fell short with the intercultural competence, not embracing the community as much as we hoped. And even though we had pre-departure procedures, but we felt that we needed to have even a more thorough analysis of our procedures. And one of the suggestions by Ullman was we should have connected the teachers with the pre-service teachers before we travel. And by doing that, they would have established at least the preliminary connection, and then would have been able to have more impact and more like very favorable reflection on the teachers, especially teachers who were not from the United States. So we were left with lingering questions, how would we ensure that our pre-service teachers maintain a focus of diverse students once they become teachers and actually center culturally responsive teaching in their future employment? What else can we do besides what we've already done as pre-departure? And how can we help shift that attitude, preconceived notions in pre-service teachers regarding a host educational system and culture? And so with that being said, thank you. Thank you for listening.
But I almost want to bring this. Yeah.
I have a question about the pre-service teachers in Costa Rica. The first question is there a post-return experience where they have to do something in the classroom, create lesson plans or something that will help assure that there's something lasting beyond just that?
Excellent question. As a matter of fact, several months after we came back, I organized a get-together, with pizzas, knowing that the students are always hungry, no matter when and how. And I actually built only an hour. Students stayed 2.5 hours. They want to talk. They want to debrief. And I said, is it okay, just for my own purposes, it's not going to be published or put on YouTube, I would record that. what I saw, it was so revealing, and that was with the first cohort. Like, there were some students, Latina students, who talked about how much they learned about themselves, that they were hiding their Latina intersectionality before. They weren't proud of who they were. But because of this experience, because of how much they learned about themselves, they felt like it opened up some possibilities they've never imagined before. And except that one Latina student who continued, even like during that post debriefing, saying they don't know what they're doing. They don't have any education. They don't so she continued, stating the same thing what she did. And that's what left me with that lingering question: how can I change some of those preconceived notions?
And that brings me to my comment. So we're having students going to Ecuador, education students, to work with education students at the University of Cuenca this summer. And they have 8 Zoom sessions in which they have to interact with each other before departure. And they're already doing it. They're on their 3rd Zoom session already. And I think, as he said, that would really make a big difference.
Yes. And while we've done it with the host families, but we should have done it with teachers as well. We should have connected, with teachers, yes.
Hi, thank you for your presentations. My name is Cynthia Becker. I'm from Boston University. It's strange to see myself on the screen. Okay. So my question was, how long are these programs that you're talking about? Because I didn't have a sense of the length. So my university has short-term, maybe a week or maybe a couple weeks in the summer, and then long-term. And the long-term programs, they're actually in universities in different countries. And so very different experiences, the short term. So could you talk about that? Maybe what you think might be more successful. So for both of you.
Yeah, I'll start holding the microphone and I'll pass it to you. So my program is 28 days, exactly 4 weeks. And first week we travel, and then see biodiversity, culture, and then the last 3 weeks we're in the school from 7 to 2:20 every day except Saturday, Sunday. And on weekends we travel as well. We continue exploring or interacting with host families. So it's a 4-week study abroad, and again, not managed by any company, but managed by me and by that university alum. So everything has to be taken care of by us.
Large groups, 10 days to 2 weeks. Small groups, 1 or 2, they will have about 4 weeks. Main thing is determined by price point. We try to keep per student around $2,500. Cuba can sometimes be cheaper. And so if we cap at that, that determines how many days we can spend out, and we keep a very tight, packed schedule.
Since you mentioned the price, I'm going to mention first time $2,000 plus tuition. Tuition is around $1,600 plus airfare around $500. So it becomes around $4,000 for 4 weeks, all included, all meals, all transportation within the country, all excursions, everything, accommodations. Everything is included. And the second time we raised by $500 because of the price of the fuel and etc.
I can.
One. Is it for me or?
1 week can be enough. You might just have to pack in travel days like outside of that 1 week, but it is possible to fit a good bit in a week.
I confess I'm having a fangirl experience about everybody on the panel today. So let's give them a round of applause.
Hora de almuerzo. Vamos a almorzar. Afuera vamos a dividirnos en grupos para caminar al lugar del almuerzo. So it's lunchtime. We are going to experience lunch as students would experience it here if you attend this university. So it's a chance to learn a little bit more about WOW. We have representatives outside. We'll be kind of in groups to walk over to where